Part 8. Restarting the Myth. Author, Feng Chao Huang. Chapter 71. Lundam Countryside, Northwest. The vehicle exits the wide highway and turns into a secluded tree-lined path. After continuing for about 50 kilometers, you can see tall walls surrounded by mountains and forests. There are guard watchtowers on all sides of the wall. Guards stand guard 24 hours a day, and searchlights patrol at night. It is like a large, heavily guarded prison. After passing 3 levels in a row, you will see an ancient castle surrounded by dense woods. It is built of natural logs and stones and is dotted with vegetation, giving people a feeling of being integrated with nature. The castle fully displays the beauty of natural harmony. It is surrounded by wooden villas built subsequently, forming a continuous mountain villa community. Butterflies and bees are busy flying through the flowers. The breeze blows and the shadows of the trees are mottled and swaying, attracting birds to chase and cry. It is a very warm place that makes every visitor feel peaceful and comfortable, especially the rows of wooden villas, which look like a resort for aristocratic gentlemen. Hongielen Lunatic Asylum. Sydney parked the car in the parking lot and came to the office to put on his white coat. Although he no longer held the priesthood, he still had a side job doing research in a mental hospital. Hongielen is not an ordinary lunatic asylum. The doctors and nurses employed are all magicians. Several of the attending doctors are from different churches, and they all have the strength of the Golden Mage level. Sydney stopped in front of the dean's office, checked his clothes, and then knocked on the door. "Come in, there is no nurse in the room." Sydney pushed open the door and came to the dean's desk. In front of him was a bald old man with a grey beard and reading glasses. Director of Hongielen Lunatic Asylum, Plank. Plank is unkempt, wearing a greasy white coat, and his beard has not been trimmed for a long time. It is knotted and stiff, and hangs hard on his chest. When he touches the desk, he will make a knocking sound. He has an odor that is unique to the elderly. He is often interviewed by the Human Resources Department for molesting female nurses, borrowing money from patients and not repaying him, and occasionally gets nagging. He suddenly curses during meetings, which makes people very uncomfortable. It's hard to believe his mental state. Maybe this old man has already gone crazy. Sydney once secretly investigated his own dean, who was a non-believer, or in other words, he believed in everything and a little bit of every god. Gangplank was born in the Free Mage Alliance. Because several major churches wanted to arrange for one of their own to become the dean, they failed in 9 consecutive votes and finally voted him out. According to rumors, this old man is probably a legendary mage. It should be true. After all, it is hearsay, so the credibility is still very high. Sydney had great respect for Dean Plank. He once saw with his own eyes that the dean made an attending physician depressed and then put him to death. In less than 2 hours, a promising golden mage died like this. No more. "Sydney, I heard that you were fired from the Church of Nature. Why, are you here today to apply for a salary increase?" Plank said happily. Sydney smiled slightly and said politely, "That's not the case. Without the post of natural church, I can devote more time and energy to serving patients, which is a good thing. I passed by your office to increase my workload. Is that okay? Are you not afraid of going crazy?" "No, my faith in the goddess of nature is unwavering." "It's hard to say, your teacher was more determined than anyone else back then." "Sydney, if you want to talk like this, then I have nothing to say. No more joking, tell me, what exactly do you want to see me for?" Plank opened his desk drawer and took out a large box of butter bread to show off. While eating, he said, "With all due respect, although you are mentally healthy, you are a very purposeful person. In the past, you were hiding from others. Just follow me and you won't come to my office if you have nothing to do." Sydney smiled awkwardly. This was why he didn't like the dean very much. He spoke straightforwardly and had no artistic sense of language. However, it is also good to communicate with this kind of people. You don't have to beat around the bush and just say what you have to say. This morning, several students called me. London is currently in a difficult situation. It has been confirmed that the information about the Death Knight's appearance is true. Sydney lowered his voice. So what? You don't think that my old bones can catch a Death Knight and lock him up in a lunatic asylum, do you? Gangplank bent his beard and licked the cream off it, not to mention that I can't do it, even if I can. The Death Knight is not a madman, why should I catch him? Sydney. There is reason and evidence, and Sydney cannot refute it. The Death Knight is indeed not a madman. One more thing, who confirmed the information, and why do you think the Death Knight is really coming and he will not leave the underground catacombs? This is a consensus. We must believe in science. Planck shrugged. You can ask the church to try aircraft and cannons. Times are progressing. Don't always think about using magic to deal with enemies. Ordinary people's imagination is also changing the world. For example, you are a golden mage, but in front of aircraft and cannons, you are just flesh and blood. Once you step into the realm of forbidden magic, a pistol can kill you. Why should I go to the forbidden demon realm if I have nothing to do? Sydney was extremely speechless, knowing that if he didn't interrupt, the old man could talk all day just like he did in meetings, so he opened his mouth and said, Dean, Don't interrupt, I haven't finished speaking yet. Half an hour later, Sydney looked at the dean in front of him exhausted, his mind tortured. He regretted his rashness very much. If he had known this, he would have perished with the Lord of the Void. By the way, where were you talking about just now? The part about the Earth Center cult, right? Did I say that? Sydney's head was a mess. He recalled that he seemed to have said that this was the purpose of his visit to Dean Planck. He simply took over the conversation and said, Dean, my former teacher Marshall, the evil god of the Earth Center Church, the Lord of the Void, is still in the God's chosen continent. His mind is not lingering on the Star Realm universe. I smell the breath of conspiracy. A disaster sweeping across the God's chosen continent is about to come. Go on. Planck put down the cream cake, his face gradually becoming solemn. The Death Knight leaving the underground tomb is the best example. I can't find the source of the disaster, but I guess the Lord of the Void must know something. Sydney's eyes flashed. My strength is not enough to find out where the evil god exists. I came to the Dean for help. I want to personally cut off this sinful master-disciple relationship. Okay, but it's hard to find the Lord of the Void with my own strength. I will contact other people and give you news in a while. Sorry for bothering you, Dean. It's nothing. You're going crazy if you don't get treated. I should do it. Planck raised his finger to the door and said to the guest, when you pass by the nurse's station, call Jenny and tell her that the Dean has a magic that can make her bigger and is ready to show her alone. Sydney was happy to escape. After thanking him again, he left the office. He breathed a sigh of relief standing outside the door. The old man really has something. If that set of words hadn't been outdated long ago, he would have been on guard and made psychological hints for himself. I'm afraid he would have confessed everything just now. Sydney straightened his clothes and went to the nurse station. He remembered the nurse named Jenny, who came from the Church of the Heavenly Father and was said to be the illegitimate daughter of a certain bishop. Rightward arrow. Sydney sighed as he walked. What a strange bishop, who actually took a different approach and didn't like little boys. In the office, Dean Planck ate another large box of butter bread and shook his head at the door. I respect the choice of fate and am willing to help you once. You'd better not go crazy, otherwise I can only push you onto the operating table myself. He opened the filing cabinet behind him, took out the wooden box with the golden triangle painted on it, opened it and rummaged through the wooden box to pick and choose. The cross of the Heavenly Father, the pendant of death, the metal of the sun, the holy grail of blood, the ancient pentagram one-eyed. They are all ordinary little objects. Finally, Gangplank took out a dark ring and held it tightly in his hand. He murmured with dark eyes, "Whether the Death Knight is real or not, we really need to confirm it. He is too dangerous. And Marshall, why do you keep pestering Sydney? Is there anything worth his nostalgia in London? He actually found his sanity and discovered the true meaning of balance. He shouldn't be so smart. Sewer. Da 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 da." The undead warhorse ran back and forth, and Wayne controlled the warhorse to use the cavalry sprint skill. The sparring partner was Aubin, and the dog was chased and ran, wagging its tail happily while running. There was also an audience on the sidelines, Axew. The white owl stared at the three lively and jumping sand sculptures with wide eyes. The picture was too eye-catching and difficult to accept for a while. If this is the true face of the Death Knight, those souls who died tragically under the sword would be wronged. "Axew, come here." Wayne sat on the horse, and suddenly raised his arm without knowing what he thought of. Axew didn't want to get too close to the Death Knight, but was stared at by 6 blind men, so she flew over reluctantly. The white snow owl landed on the arm covered with armor, and was scratched on the head by Wayne, closing her eyes and opening her mouth, looking very enjoyable. "I still like your unruly look, this face is too stupid now." Wayne's dark eyes stared at the snow owl with white light, and the power of death representing tranquility and eternity entangled and slowly injected into the snow owl. Axew subconsciously wanted to resist, but it was too late. Death corroded its white hair and flesh, and covered it with a layer of dry and ugly undead skin. Axew screamed, flapped its wings and flew up, trying to get rid of the breath of death on its body, fearing that it would never be able to return to the embrace of the sun. "It seems that you like it too." Wayne laughed, and Yulia followed with a chuckle. Seeing this, Aubin raised his head and howled continuously. With the flying owl skeleton making a shrill cry in the air, the whole villain's mother opened the door for the villain, and the villain came home. Not long after, the second vengeful spirit summoned by Wayne came along the sewer, looking at the scene in front of him, his heart was desolate. Abio also wanted to be a superhero. "Abio, what's that expression on your face, did you just go into the toilet?" Wayne raised his arm, and Axew fell on it helplessly, staring at Abio with a pair of black eyes, and had a further understanding of the family background of the Death Knight. The Death Knight trained one servant after another, and it was impossible for him to be bored. The big plot was probably to massacre the 9 million people of London and create a second underground tomb. "My great master, Abio came at your summons." Abio came to the warhorse and knelt on one knee respectfully. Aubin on the side let out a low roar. He didn't like Abio very much. The latter was too ungrateful. He pretended to be respectful to his master but actually had selfish motives. If it weren't for the contract that bound him and prevented him from betraying, this guy with thick eyebrows and big eyes would definitely lead the rebellion. "Hey, human. How is the case going? Have you sent your brother to jail?" Wayne said condescendingly. "The evidence collected half a year ago has been destroyed, and some insiders have chosen to remain silent for various reasons. It is very difficult to investigate and collect evidence, and it may take some time," Abio said bitterly. "Tell me about it." "The general situation. Abio advocates the justice and fairness of the law and worships it as a god, but there is not only law in the world, but also money and power, especially the latter. When power is traded, the law chooses to turn a blind eye. The investigation of the case is very slow, especially the evidence collection link, which can be said to be difficult. Many decisive evidences have been erased, and Abio must start from the beginning. The congressman seemed to have heard the news and knew that she was entangled by evil spirits. She spent a lot of money to hire several magicians of unknown origin and dismissed the underworld that had been serving her." "Wait, what was the name of the gang you just said?" "The Black Snake Society, a black force that has only risen in the past 2 years. Their boss is very smart and has always served the congressman, ABO said truthfully. The financial backer of the Black Snake Society is the rising star Doreen Johnny, a newspaper reporter who turned into a congressman. According to ABO's investigation, Doreen has a boss who used the Black Snake Society to kidnap young girls and send them to her boss in exchange for her current political status. Damn it! Wayne's skull was beating with white flames. He only dared to imagine what the magic girl was like when he held the shadow nightmare in his hand. These social scum with beastly hearts didn't know their surnames when they had a little power. Do you really think that darkness can cover up all crimes? There are no superheroes in the darkness. ABO, write down the list you investigated and lead the way. I plan to visit them tonight. Master, are you ready? Kill them all. My sword has been hungry for a long time. I want to see a river of blood. It turns out that they are not robbing their business. That's great. ABO put on a helpless expression. My master, they are not qualified for you to take action in person. Give me some more time, and soon. Soon there will be new victims. But, the goddess of death I believe in admires these villains very much and is ready to recruit them. What I have to do is to send them to the goddess of death. Wayne interrupted directly and added, no buts, don't preach the laws of the world to God. That's your insistence. God doesn't care. After saying that, he snorted coldly and put aside the fantasy of doing evil. There is no rush to imprison the magic girl. There are plenty of opportunities. Tonight, the Death Knight will transform into a hero in the dark to violently control. Wait a minute. Wayne, Dan. No, according to this idea, he should not be the Death Knight. It is more reasonable to change his name to the Dark Knight. Restarting the myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 72. ABO is a water ghost. He is bound to the Tame River, including the incoming tributaries of the upper reaches. Strictly speaking, his territory is larger than Aban. Including the inflow of tributaries means that Abo's territory will expand further during heavy rain seasons. The drainage outlet of the city of London is connected to the Mother River. Even if there is no heavy rain, ABO can move freely in the sewer. Except that the smell of domestic sewage is a bit stronger and the heavy metal content of industrial sewage exceeds the standard, there is nothing wrong with it. That's disgusting. Did you just step on shit? Wayne said in disgust. ABO immediately retorted. Although he was dead, he still retained good hygiene habits. He came here through the flood control and drainage channels instead of the smoky sewers. These words reminded Wayne that ABO was a living map of London sewers and knew the distribution of London sewers better than anyone else. Of course, the housekeeper Fula is not bad either. As a unique and excellent steward in Wayne's mind, Fula knows many tunnels that are not connected to the River Tame, air raid shelters and underground private passages reserved for the rich, which are of great strategic value. With ABO as a living map, Wayne became more confident in his control of the sewers and decisively changed his schedule. During the day, I would catch up on my sleep and diary, and stay in the sewers throughout the night, familiarizing myself with the terrain while looking for fellow elements who had taken refuge. Don't be afraid, folks, I'm Wayne and I'm here to save you. Speaking of the essence of life, Wayne had to complain that the four major elements satisfy the essence of life, but there are losses in this accumulation process and it does not always maintain an upward trend. The most intuitive way to lose it is to use magic, basic magic related to the four elements. Every time Wayne uses basic magic, such as the Earth Wall spell, he will consume his own stored earth elements. According to the theory in the book, magician apprentices are like this. The six-pointed star has not yet been ignited and connected, their thinking has not been qualitatively upgraded, and they cannot directly control the free elements of the outside world. This is a process that every magician must go through. Therefore, Wayne no longer uses elemental magic much. The elements in other people's bodies have been exhausted and can be replenished by meditating for a while. But he can't. There are too few transport captains. Where can he find the second Lord of the Void? In fact, it is practical and can be used. It can be precisely controlled by thinking, reducing the proportion of magic blending, and the basic magic will not consume much of the four elements. To put it bluntly, Wayne took a breath in the sewer and replenished the four elements he had consumed. But he didn't want to. This is what squirrel syndrome looks like. Wayne has an obsessive-compulsive disorder about hoarding supplies. Before time travel, he had accumulated a lot of things that he thought were useful. Even if time proved that these things were useless, he was reluctant to throw them away because he firmly believed that they could be used in the future. His hoarding behavior not only happens in real life, but also on the internet. Whenever he thinks these things are useful, he will subconsciously collect them in his favorites, shopping cart, hard drive, and cloud disk. For a while, he was even obsessed with categorizing Japanese and Korean, European and American, and classical fairy tales from the second dimension. This meaningless behavior made him happy. Asking means being prepared. To sum up, Wayne's squirrel syndrome is in an advanced stage and cannot be cured. Without the internet, he set out to collect magic-related things, including pistols, crowbars, punches, four elements, and magic books. No one refuses. One can imagine how exaggerated the scale of his warehouse will be one day in the future. Abio took Wayne through the sewers, pointing to the iron ladders and exits, explaining which road and street were above and what landmark buildings were nearby. Wayne had an amazing memory and a mediocre sense of direction. After going around a few times, he became confused. He rewoven the memory network, processed the information in his brain, summarized and transformed words into images, deepening the memory impression, and a map of Lundam divided into upper and lower layers gradually became clear. The bar above is controlled by the Black Snake Club. According to the counselor's instructions, Johnny, the boss of the Black Snake Club, restrained his men and stopped expanding his territory. He has been very low-key in recent days. Abio pointed to the manhole cover above. I'm not interested in trash fish. Take me to the congressman. Wayne said on horseback, the Black Snake Club is a dog raised by the congressman. Without the support of the congressman, they are nothing. Instead of trying to reach up step by step, it is more troublesome to deal with the congressman directly. But that's not what you just said. You asked me to make a list. Abio was helpless. Little did he know that Wayne just wanted to hang out in the sewer a few more times, just treating him as an undead and not a human being, and tormenting his disobedient undead brother in different ways. Abio didn't say anything, but changed direction and continued to lead the way. This move is exactly what Abio wants. The Black Snake Club is a pawn of the congressman. If the congressman wants to be shot 100 times, the members of the Black Snake Club will be shot at least 50 times. But from the bottom of his heart, he hopes that these social trash will die. Legal sanctions. Compared with mysterious deaths, criminals are punished by law, which is more satisfying and makes people believe that justice still exist in the world. It is not justice linked to mystery, but justice closely related to reality. People do not need to pray for God's mercy, they only need to make a phone call to get legal assistance. The same holds true in reverse. God is too far away and too empty to deter criminals and villains, and is far less powerful than the law that is so close at hand. The same is being judged by God and judged by the law. The former is more like a principle that leads people to do good, while the latter is a real deterrent to violence. Abio hopes that after the congressman dies, the master will hand over the congressman's minions to him. Without the congressman's protection, the minions who have lost the protective umbrella will not be able to stand up. He wants to punish this group of evil people with the iron fist of the law, and give a warning to other evil people, and make them think carefully before committing crimes, whether it is your head or the bullet that is hard. When leading the way, Abio said these words, trying to test Wayne's attitude, but to his surprise, Wayne agreed very straightforwardly. Hey, could it be that under the evil appearance of the master, there is a completely opposite heart of justice? Wayne saw what Abio was thinking and sneered, that's right, but why do we have to choose one of the two, instead of both? Master, I don't understand what you mean. You are right, God is too ethereal. It is a belief and a moral concept. It can restrain good people but can't scare bad people. We can't expect bad people to have moral concepts. It is far better to take them to the execution ground than to talk to bad people about big principles. Wayne said, but some bad people are not afraid of the execution ground, such as Congressman Doreen, who is about to meet. She has the ability to silence the law. She knows that she will not be sent to the execution ground. There are many big men who will pardon her crimes. At this time, we have to change to a flexible way of fighting violence with violence. The law is fair in its setting. Some people think they are special and not fair. Then agree with them and tell them what is really unfair. He. At the end, Wayne laughed heartily, and in a concise sentence, the other party started the fight first. Abio was silent, feeling that the master had opened a door for him, but soon, he frowned and said, if I keep implementing this idea, my original intention will change little by little because of the power of recklessness. At that time, I will also think that I am special, even more excessive than them. The dragon slayer will eventually become an evil dragon. I will think that I am a god, that I am above everything and can dominate everything. What should I do then? Bar Book 69 New. We'll talk about it then. Councilman Doreen has a rental house in Nalundan. It is not large and focuses on being clean. In fact, she only lives in a rental house when she is canvassing for votes. Under normal circumstances, she lives in a big mansion in the West District, and her neighbors are also councillors. Standard one set in front of people and another set behind people. Abio pushed open the manhole cover and crawled out, with water stains dripping from his trouser legs, and walked towards the councillor's house step by step. Wayne looked at the exit with a bit of a dilemma. He could get out, but Yulia snorted, leaped, and hit the wall, and the wall was painted with ripples of flashing purple arcs. A space door opened and carried Wayne to the ground. Aubin followed closely behind and jumped out. Wayne looked at the ground behind him and saw the skeleton owl flapping its wings and flying out. He raised his arm to catch it. Yulia, I didn't know you had this ability. Master, you never asked. I said, don't talk back to me. Wayne jumped off the warhorse, released the owl, stepped to the front door of the mansion, and said sourly, you can make money again if you lose it, but you can make endless money if you lose your conscience. She used to be a reporter for a newspaper, and she became a politician halfway through her career. She made so much in just a few years. It's really enviable. Abio shuddered when he heard this and hurriedly said, Master, she has fallen, you won't. You can't make so much money if you fall. Abortion is more like it, Wayne said subconsciously, and then he suddenly realized that he felt that he had noticed the truth. Abio was speechless. Maybe it was really possible. Wayne raised his hand to hold the door handle, and the corrosive power of death rushed out, and he easily pushed open the door. There was no noise of breaking into the door, no fingerprints left, and even the door handle was not left. Without evidence, the police would not catch him. Wayne liked the Death Knight vest more and more. It was just that the vest name was a bit unsatisfactory. It would be more perfect if it was changed to Dark Knight. The mansion was dark, and Councillor Doreen was not at home. He found the safe with cash and account books. Wayne helped to open the door and divided the stolen goods on the spot. Abio got the account book, and Wayne got the Queen's head and jewelry and gold. Abio was stunned. In his subjective impression, the owner was a lone knight who wandered in the dark, his body rotted, but his spirit still adhered to the chivalry, and he regarded money as dirt and women as nothing. The result? I don't know if it was an illusion, but he saw a smile on the skull. Abio didn't say anything. When the police station handed in the stolen goods, it often went through several departments, and the amount of stolen goods shrank a lot. As long as the decisive evidence was still there, these were all tolerable. He took a deep breath, sat on the sofa, and hid in the dark shadows, waiting for Counselor Doreen to return home. Click. Wayne turned on the light, put his hands behind his back, and looked at the artworks on the wall. He didn't know much about art, but he knew that artworks were often linked to speculation and money laundering. "Master, can you turn off the light? This will scare the counselor away." "We should. You should go to the basement. The counselor is at home." "Her basement is quite large," Wayne said without turning his head. Abio was stunned when he heard this, and walked quickly towards the basement. There is a door in the middle of the corridor behind the living room. When it is opened, you can see the stairs extending downward until it disappears into the darkness. Abo's eyes can see very clearly in the dark. He found the secret door in the basement. After gently pushing it open, there is a different world inside. There is a long corridor underground, covered with bright red carpet, decorated with murals and wall lamps, and there is an exit or entrance every 70 or 80 meters. Abio analyzed the location of the villa complex on the ground, and his heart was cold. Thinking of the missing girl kidnapped by the Black Snake Society, the coldness dissipated, and his whole heart was filled with the flame of anger. He stepped on the carpet and followed the perfume in the air to the door of a conference room. There were double doors, and there was a coat rack next to the door, with 7 or 8 coats and top hats hanging on it. Abio picked up a hat and put it on his head, lowered the brim of the hat, pushed open the door with both hands and walked in. The decoration of the conference room was more luxurious, with a huge crystal chandelier hanging, composed of hundreds of exquisite crystals, illuminating the whole room. Under the chandelier was a carefully arranged round dining table with a diameter of about 5 meters, and the table was covered with white napkins and exquisite tableware. In the corner of the wall was a phonograph with a strong classical atmosphere, and soft music was floating. The perfect combination of elegance and luxury, with a glass of champagne, is definitely an excellent banquet experience. But there is one place that is out of tune with the overall layout of the restaurant. On the wall facing the door, there are strange symbols painted. The curved lines outline a figure, like a person covered with tentacles, or an octopus with tentacles. The simple image is too abstract. At first glance, it looks like blood graffiti. Abio couldn't tell what totem it was. He didn't care about this scene, and his eyes were coldly on the guests at the dinner. Including Doreen Johnny, who Abio has been investigating, there are a total of 8 congressmen at the scene. They leaned on the soft sofa chairs, closed their eyes and hummed along with the beat of the music. Everyone kept an official smile on their faces, quiet and easygoing. The congressmen were so addicted to the music that they didn't even notice someone pushing the door and walking in. Abio looked at the dining table and slowly breathed a sigh of relief. There was no disgusting food on the table as he imagined. They were all some precious ingredients, and they were all Frank cuisine. "Doreen Johnny, you're under arrest," Abio said coldly, ready to ask where the missing girls were being held. Counselor Doreen did not reply, but swam in the ocean of music with a satisfied smile on her face. Abio frowned. The scene seemed familiar. The 8 counselors were wandering in the sky, just like taking some contraband after a meal. Their minds are not in their bodies, and they can't be awakened. Wayne walked into the restaurant and looked at the strange patterns on the wall. He had seen similar patterns in magic books, which were related to the belief in an evil god. Teacher Yuja provided magic books related to evil gods to prevent students from making bad friends and getting involved with unclear people. She was worried that too much detail would make students curious. There were not many records about evil gods in magic books, and only a few words were written: blood faith. This is an evil god who lives in hell. Different from the two goddesses of darkness and death, he is one of the main enemies of the Heavenly Father Church. To a certain extent, the evil gods of hell are primitive and wild, and their horror is far greater than darkness and death. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Restarting the Myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 73. Wayne quietly looked at the totem murals related to the evil gods. The magic reading material recorded that each of the evil gods in hell wanted to destroy the world. In contrast, darkness and death only conflicted with nature, the sun, and moonlight in terms of faith, and there was no clear record that the two goddesses wanted to destroy the world. Just listen to these words. There is indeed no clear record that the goddess wants to destroy the world, but it also does not say that the goddess will not destroy the world. One embraces darkness and the other welcomes death, which makes ordinary people more or less psychologically resistant. Nature, the sun, and the moonlight are different. Wayne is willing to throw himself into their arms. Master, where are the counselors thinking? Seeing Wayne staring at the murals on the wall without saying a word, Abio realized that the situation was not that simple. Doreen and other 8 counselors manipulated the black forces to abduct young girls, which was not just a simple power-sex transaction. His heart sank, and a glimmer of hope finally rose, but it was instantly extinguished. Abio waited for the master's answer, hoping that he was overthinking. Wayne didn't say anything. He raised his hand and touched his bald head. He turned around and came to the dining table. He slapped a sitting counselor away with a backhand. The round table with a diameter of 5 meters had only 8 seats. The seats were spaced wide enough for a dead knight in armor to stand. But Wayne still chose to let the other party passively give way. Since there was always someone who had to take 2 more steps, why couldn't it be a counselor? Besides, the other party didn't object. The finger guard was attached to the dining table, and a circle of dark ink spread out. The corrosive power representing death penetrated the bone marrow, and the large round table with a diameter of 5 meters was reduced to ashes at a speed visible to the naked eye. After the wooden table disappeared, the magic array with a diameter of about 3 meters was exposed in front of Wayne and Abio. The main body of the complex pattern was a pentagram structure, drawn with blood, corresponding to the blood totem on the wall, which was just a standard inverted pentagram. As a symbol of protection and power, the pentagram is often used by magicians to cast spells. In a broad sense, it is believed to represent good friendship, piety, generosity, spirit, and chastity. But if the pentagram is turned upside down, all of the above are reversed, which means losing good. The opposite of good is evil. The inverted pentagram is usually linked to the evil god of hell. Depending on the evil god they believe in, believers will add different symbols to the inverted pentagram magic circle. The magic circle in front of them is related to the belief in blood, indicating that even if the 8 members are not believers in blood, they have a direct relationship with each other. The evil god of hell should be handed over to the Heavenly Father Church for handling. As a preparatory member of the Natural Church and a temporary holder of the Shadow Nightmare, Wayne is not professionally qualified, but since he is here, there is no reason to pretend that he has seen nothing. Besides, he is a skeleton. Going to the church to find help in the middle of the night, it would be a miracle if the priest can give him a good face. Wayne memorized the pentagram magic circle firmly in his mind, waved his hand and sprinkled the corrosive breath of death. The floor tiles fell off and collapsed, and quickly turned into sand until they completely dissipated. The 3-meter diameter deep well was pitch black. Abio stepped forward quickly and looked down into the abyss. It was so deep that he could not see the bottom. His scalp was numb for a moment, and he hurriedly stepped back 2 steps to avoid falling into it. As a beginner, Wayne only knew the basic magic theory, and he could not understand the complex magic circle effect at all. Facing Abo's eyes for a solution, he snorted coldly, "It is connected to a space channel. It looks deep. The minds of the congressmen are all below. They drink blood and get strong spiritual satisfaction." Abo nodded, half understood. "This is much more terrible than contraband. Master, can the space channel be closed?" "You ask me, who should I ask? Otherwise, you wait a moment, I will call the teacher." Wayne didn't say anything. He had never shown his true face in front of Abo. He deliberately created an illusion that his master was not human. He thought it was interesting at first, but it became more and more interesting. Wayne didn't intend to reveal his true face. He said in a deep voice, "The Abyss Passage has a mechanism to open it. If I'm not mistaken, the gang kidnapped the girl and sent her here. The congressman threw the girl into the abyss, and then, it's a bit weird. You can think of it as a bloody feast. Now that the magic circle is destroyed, the Abyss Passage will disappear soon. It doesn't matter if it's left alone. It should be like this." Wayne's basic magic theory is very solid. Based on the central guiding ideology of everything changes but not deviating from the essence, he admitted that he had a gambling element, but it did let him grasp the key point. Soon, a roar came from the dark abyss. Indistinctly, Abo and Wayne's thinking was disturbed, and a magnificent illusion appeared before their eyes. In a deep sea of blood, a huge figure raised his arms and roared. Its body is as majestic as a mountain, and its surface is covered with green scales. The dense scales are bathed in sticky blood, shining with a light known as cruelty. The giant beast has a spiral backward curved horn on its head, and its eyes are as red as magma. The roar echoes like thunder, making the entire sea of blood roll and shake, stirring up huge red waves and turning into pieces of red waterfalls. If you look closely, you will find that there are not only giant beasts in the sea of blood, but also a number of dilapidated ships that look like toys around the giant beast. If the blood sea is compared to the bathtub of the giant beast, these ships are small yellow duck toys. But obviously, this sea of blood is the hunting ground of the giant beast, and there is only one ruler. The dilapidated ships are overturned by the huge tail that looks like a crocodile, and the broken wooden boards slowly sink. It seems that there are creatures rising and falling on the sea, reaching out to the sky for help. The beast glared at Wayne, its roar echoing in the sea of blood, wantonly venting its power and conveying an irresistible fate to Wayne. Wayne destroyed the ritual and was destined to become its blood food. Wayne, It's just a harsh word, who can't do that? Come up if you have the ability. Wayne used his mind to project a spatial phantom, and the armored skeleton knight stepped into the sea of blood. The huge figure opened up infinite shadows, looking down at the beast from a high place, slowly drawing out his sword and slashing down. The phantom had no lethality, but it expressed Wayne's will. In the face of provocation and threats, he would never give in. That's right, it's me, the Death Knight. I came here on the orders of the goddess of death, only to eradicate evil and promote positive energy. If you don't accept it, you can go to the goddess to argue. After that, Wayne cut off the live broadcast directly and took Abo's mind out of the Blood Sea illusion. Wayne didn't know what was going on over there in the Blood Sea, he just knew it was too exciting to just pretend and run away. Thanks to the vest, Wayne thought the more of this stuff the better. After the goddess gave him another prayer of the Lord of the Void, he began to pray for the goddess to give him the second and third pieces of divine equipment. He didn't directly name which goddess it was, he was fine, he wasn't picky. Abo was still amazed at the Blood Sea illusion, his experience in the past few days had broadened his horizons instantly. He took too big a step, his corpus cavernosum was strained, and his worldview was being reshaped. Wayne looked down at the deep well, the magic circle was destroyed, and the space channel connecting the blood faith dissipated by itself, revealing the true appearance of the well. The dry well was 7 or 8 meters deep, and the diameter was still 3 meters wide. On the brick and stone wall of the well, there were neatly arranged wooden crosses, some of which were empty, some were nailed to describe the withered women, and more were mummies like dry corpses. Blood dripped down the cross, and the bottom of the well was a foul-smelling quagmire of blood and soil. 8 black snakes roamed at the bottom of the well, shaking their heads and hissing, just like cats encountering catnip. The surface of the venomous snakes was black scales, and when illuminated by the light source, they reflected red blood light. They sensed the light source and soon woke up, spitting out their tongues to warn the upper part. 8 venomous snakes corresponded to 8 congressmen, and their minds were living in the venomous snakes. Weird. It was really weird. Wayne didn't know much about the evil god, and it was the first time he had seen the evil god of hell. With an indifferent attitude of not understanding, he waved his hand and sprinkled a piece of death. The gray fog turned into 8 gray snakes, chasing the black venomous snakes and fighting each other. At first, the venomous snakes dared to resist, but when they found that their bites had no effect on the other party, and every time the other party bit them, their bodies would quickly rot and expose their bones, and they fled in pain. Chasing and running, until the 8 venomous snakes were covered with wounds, rolling and curling in pain in the bloody mud. Their minds are confined to the venomous snakes, and the severe pain makes them unable to stay awake, and they can't end the ceremony and return to their bodies. Wayne slowly said, "My face is not suitable for being seen by others. These girls are handed over to you. Send those who can be saved to the hospital, and the rest. Deal with it in your way." After that, he turned and left the restaurant. Abio nodded, jumped down the deep well quickly, rescued the victims on the cross, and laid them flat on the carpet in the restaurant. Looking at this place full of sins, Abio shook his head in disappointment. He thought of someone and quickly came to the living room of the mansion. He first called the hospital ambulance, and then made another call in a deep voice. "Boss, it's me." "Bo, is it you? Is it really you? Damn, where did you go? Everyone thought you were sacrificed, and I almost believed it," the other side of the phone cursed, but the joy between the words was not concealed. "I'm sorry, boss. I'm really dead. Perry filled me with cement and threw me into the Thame River." Abio calmly told the facts. On the other side of the phone was Abo's superior, Officer Green. "Perry said something very right. If you want to climb up, you must have the help of a noble person. Officer Green is Abo's noble person and has helped him a lot. For example, taking the blame." "Bo, what are you talking about? If you are dead, who is calling me? I can't say more about the details. Remember that case? I am now at the home of Counselor Doreen Johnny. Bring the people you trust most. The address is..." "Damn it, make it clear. Why are you at the counselor's home? Do you want me to take the blame?" Ignoring Green's roar, Abio calmly put down the phone after saying the address. He searched in the living room, found a pack of cigarettes, lit it, and sat on the sofa to smoke. The cigarette butt flickered, and Abo's pale face was full of confusion. He didn't want to get in touch with the past, but now that things have come to this, he has to do it. In order to seek justice for the victim, he must find someone he can trust. But if he can contact the boss today, he can contact Timmy tomorrow. Once the rules are broken, people will only relax their requirements for themselves step by step. Is it right or wrong to do this? Will the master be angry if he knows? Half an hour later, more than 10 police cars surrounded Counselor Doreen's mansion. Officer Green looked at the ambulance in the distance with an expressionless face. His face was gloomy and terrible. In addition, stretchers wrapped in white cloth were lifted out of the basement one by one. There were also 8 counselors, with crooked mouths and slanted eyes, unconscious, and occasionally woke up and immediately let out heart-wrenching screams. Green held the account book in his arms, but did not give it to anyone. He insisted on keeping it close to his body. He mobilized police forces to blockade 8 mansions in a row. All officers used live ammunition. When suspicious targets were found approaching, they were allowed to shoot freely. Officer Green was in a very bad mood. The case involved too much, and there were traitors within the police station. He had to bear the blame even if he didn't want to. Thinking of the pressure he was about to face, he couldn't help but curse. Green didn't see Avio, only the wet footprints, the damp sofa, and the ashtray full of cigarette butts. "Hello, Officer Green." A black car stopped outside the police cordon. Several men in black suits got out of the car, showed their IDs from the police station, and quickly came to Officer Green. "Why so slow?" Green made a sound with dissatisfaction, and then said, "The altar and the incomprehensible portrait are in the basement. I understand the rules. You are professionals. I won't ask anything. I only have one question. Please tell me." The man in black put on his white gloves and let several colleagues go first. 6 months ago, Senior Inspector Beau Philip, who investigated this case, disappeared. I received a call from him tonight. He has solved everything, but he told me that he is dead. Can you please help me get help from professionals? An explanation, Green asked irritably. The man in black was silent for a moment. Generally speaking, when a person dies, he is really dead, but some special cases cannot be ruled out. I am sorry that I cannot give you a reasonable explanation. So, although Officer Philip is dead, he is back. This kind of description is not impossible. The man in black crossed his fingers and let the white gloves fit between his fingers. "Officer Green, we are old acquaintances. If you don't like to hear it, if Officer Philip comes back, the case will be more difficult than the case we encountered today." "What do you mean? You look down on my people?" "No, please don't get me wrong. I'm not questioning Officer Philip's professionalism. He is an excellent police officer and deserves everyone's admiration, but..." The man in black changed the subject. "No one knows why he can come back. Generally speaking, we will prepare for the worst. We do not rule out that he has become an evil spirit and is secretly controlled by some terrifying existence. If one day you encounter when you get to Officer Philip, be sure to keep your distance." Green waved his hand irritably and thanked the professionals for the reminder. They were kind words, but too ugly. The man in black nodded and entered the basement, while Green came to the road outside the door. Feeling irritable, he leaned against the corner and smoked a cigarette. "Boss." A familiar voice came from the other side of the corner, and Green's hand when he lit the cigarette suddenly trembled. He did not shout loudly, but tried to stay calm, lit the cigarette, and exhaled a long puff of white mist. "Beau, are you really dead?" "It's absolutely true, you can confirm it by turning around." "Forget it, you must look ugly now." "There are some. Would you like a cigarette?" "Give me the whole package." The two of them leaned against the wall and smoked, neither of them thinking of meeting each other face to face. They communicated softly, without any sadness in their words. Green also asked about the temperature of the water at the bottom of the Tame River. The atmosphere was extremely warm, as if going back in time, until Green changed the subject. "Where's Timi? What should she do? Will you call her?" "I don't know, I really don't know." Restarting the myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 74. Sewer. Wayne sat cross-legged, taking in the homeless four elements, and his life essence was still stuck at 95%, and the progress was very slow. As the perpetrator of several element collapse incidents, Wayne was not aware that he had been investigated by several churches. The Three Goddesses Alliance, the Heavenly Father Church, Darkness, Death, and even some evil gods were very curious about the continuous element collapse incidents. Serious magicians could not guess that the so-called element collapse was actually a certain mage apprentice sucking too hard. According to their years of experience, they guessed that a holy weapon/evil weapon appeared in London, and the holder was brewing a terrible plan. Compared with the sudden appearance of the Death Knight, the mysterious mage who continuously created element collapse incidents was undoubtedly much less threatening, so several churches did not invest a lot of manpower, waiting for the incident to ferment further, marking the location of the incident on the map, and thus narrowing the scope of the investigation. Wayne's life essence was too exaggerated. The Book of Greed elevated him to a concept far beyond humans, and also explained from the side why the Lord of the Void held Wayne. The loss is too heavy. The elemental space is of great importance. It is related to whether the Lord of the Void can make further progress in the level of life. He must catch Wayne and refine it into the elemental space. He can't afford such a huge price because he has lost everything he has accumulated for many years. The protagonist of many events, Wayne himself, is not clear about the situation in the outside world. He squats in the sewer, does not fight with the world, and vows to roll everyone to death. He is doing two things at the same time. He meditates on himself to open the door to the four elements, and his mind is devoted to the second small goal, communicating with nature. This small goal is extremely difficult, and many magicians dare not even think about it. Wayne is young and ignorant, so he dares to challenge it. Intelligence comes from diligence, and genius lies in accumulation. Life is in diligence, and nothing can be gained without asking. The early bird catches the worm. The sages pointed out the way. Wayne firmly believes that the reason why he failed again and again is because he was not working hard enough and not rolling enough. Nature has been eager to communicate with him, and he has failed repeatedly because of his own lack of ability. Failure is not terrible, but giving up is terrible, and Wayne is unwilling to give up. Snap! 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 The sound of wet footsteps came from afar. Aubin, who was lying at Wayne's feet, pricked up his ears and growled in his throat to warn. Wayne opened his eyes, shook his head, put on the vest of the Death Knight, raised his hand to stroke the dog's head, and signaled Aubin to calm down. Abo is his own man, don't grin at him every time. Having said that, Wayne was very satisfied with Aubin's strong sense of protecting his master. A wisp of magic overflowed, allowing Aubin to lick it happily. Abo stopped and looked at Aubin with envy. He also wanted to lick it happily. Here we are talking about magic. The spirit of revenge desires the magic of its master. How is the case handled? Wayne said slowly. The evidence is conclusive and the case has been decided. The next step is to follow the process. Abo reported in detail that it had been 3 days since the London police station blocked the mansions of 8 councillors. Several victims received timely treatment and were out of danger. The bodies removed from the basement were also claimed by the family members, and the specific death list was confirmed. Because of the participation of the special department, the case progressed rapidly, and the efficiency was so fast that it was hard to believe that this was the Kingdom of Windsor. However, due to the participation of the special department, the case was not reported on a large scale. 8 members of Parliament were investigated for corruption, and because of too much gathering and drinking, they were collectively mentally disordered and transferred to the Red Leaf Forest Lunatic Asylum for further interrogation and treatment. Abo was not satisfied with this, but he also knew that this was the best result. It was better for ordinary people not to know some things. So, do you have any ideas? Or, what inspiration did this incident bring to you? Wayne asked with interest. I want to help more people who have suffered injustice. Oh, aren't you afraid of exposing yourself and attracting more attention? I'm already dead, and now I'm not even afraid of death. What else is there to be afraid of? Abo shook his head bitterly. He did have something to fear, such as his girlfriend Timmy. Officer Green assured him that he would arrange a civilian job for her in the police station office. But Green couldn't guarantee Timmy's mental state. If he wanted Timmy to recover his mental health, Abio had to meet him, even if it was just a phone call to let him know he was safe. Abio was very hesitant about this and asked Wayne how to solve it. The master was omnipotent and could definitely point out a clear way for him. Wayne. He was a single man who raised a dog, collectively known as a single dog, and a single dog who dreamed of having 3 relationships. What was the difference between asking him for emotional counseling and seeking death? Wayne couldn't give any reasonable advice, but he knew what Abio was struggling with, and sneered, "Don't contact her in the future. For her own good, take this opportunity to break up directly." But Abio looked reluctant. "Perry was arrested 2 days ago on charges of participating in my murder." She couldn't accept it, and her mental state was getting worse and worse. "I'm afraid she can't hold on for long." "Haha, since you already have an idea, why bother asking for my opinion? In the end, it's nothing more than not wanting to take responsibility." Wayne shook his head. "Wanting and not wanting to take responsibility, there is no such good thing in the world. My lord, it's not that I don't dare to take responsibility, but I'm worried that her life will be threatened because of me, and I can't protect her," Abio explained. "Have you slept together?" "A few times." "Just a few times," Wayne curled his lips, thinking of this lie. "Well." Abio lowered his head with a guilty conscience. The man and woman in love were still young people. It was normal to do it several times a night, but not more. They had to go to work the next day. "Did you break up?" "No." "Any more questions?" "No more." After being enlightened by his master, Abio seemed to suddenly realize what he should do. He was going to find Timmy and give him a late candlelight dinner. It may be selfish to do this, and Timmy will get into more and more trouble because of him, but adults have always been like this, and 2 opposite choices are both right and wrong. Children want it all, adults have no choice. If you have nothing to do, go away. If you don't call me from now on, don't take the initiative to come to me unless you encounter a big trouble that cannot be solved," Wayne said as he saw off his guests. His current main goal is to practice and do everything possible to strengthen himself. Abio wants to help the weak and become a hero in the dark. He is willing to help each other, which is what he wants to see. When he has no ability, he can only dream of being a hero. If he still has the ability to dream of being a hero, wouldn't his ability be in vain? What's the difference between those bastards who have great power but only use it to satisfy their personal desires? Abio did not leave and said, "My master, many people are looking for you recently." "Who?" "There are magicians and some believers of gods, especially the believers of the goddess of death. They are very active and risk being caught and imprisoned in a lunatic asylum to find you," Abio replied. Abio remembered that his master said that Death Knights believed in the goddess of death and were knights of the goddess walking in the world. Believers who also believed in the goddess of death could be counted as one of his own. He felt that it was necessary to report this matter. "What are the believers looking for me for?" Wayne touched his head and probably knew the reason. Believers of death and darkness are suppressed by the 3 goddesses alliance. So far, no church has been established in London. There are only scattered strongholds to secretly promote their beliefs. The dark night has come, allowing the followers of darkness to gain status. The followers of death can only stare in envy. It's different now. The Death Knight is here. The believers have found their backbone and want them all to bow down to the Death Knight's big white legs. The reason Abio told was not much different from Wayne's guess. The believers of death were suppressed too miserably and they were eager to stand up and spread the doctrine of death openly. Wayne secretly said that he had a headache. Speaking of which, his impression of the death believers was not bad. Mainly due to the first impression, the believers of the goddess of death are all cowards. Each one is more precious than the other. When Veronica points a small pistol, they all raise their hands and surrender, which is so cowardly that it makes people laugh and cry. But aside from first impressions, belief in death has little merit, especially the doctrine of embracing death, which is hard to like. Teacher Yuja has also repeatedly instilled in Wayne the horrors of the two evil goddesses of darkness and death. The goddess of nature is the chosen one, representing integrity, selflessness, life and kindness. Sci-fi, Bala Bala, Billy Billy, nature is so beautiful. Wayne, you are all goddesses, why should goddesses embarrass goddesses? Be empathetic and don't let male gods laugh at you. Plastic sisters are not good looking. Teacher Yuji's evaluation of faith was highly subjective, and Wayne only believed half of it, not all of it. He was a standard pragmatist, and he was willing to believe in anything as long as it was useful. The Free Mage Alliance said it well, faith makes people firm, religion makes people ignorant, don't get too close to believers, they will lower a magician's IQ. Therefore, it is okay to believe it once, but there is no need to doubt it if you believe it deeply. At the same time, Wayne also understood the truth that the same bread feeds all kinds of people. Not all followers of the goddess of nature are good people, and not all believers of the goddess of death are bad people. The scope extends to the entire God's chosen continent, and it becomes more complicated. There are no pure good guys and bad guys in the world, everyone is fighting for their own interests. How to solve this problem? Wayne touched his skull over and over again, and an image appeared in his mind. Classroom, one-to-one tutoring between teachers and students. Teacher Death, who was wearing a black robe, showed his long legs, and pointed at the blackboard with a pointer in his hand, with a line of words written on it, "Religion makes people stupid." Teacher, see, this is the point. Student, I see, the blackboard is really white. My master, do you plan to meet with the believers? They are becoming more and more active. If they are not restrained, I am afraid. Go and contact them, tell them it's the Death Knight's order, and ask them to elect a few representatives. 3 days later, in the early morning of the West End Cemetery, I will meet with these representatives and convey the will of the goddess of death. Wayne Yinkinki smiled and thanked Teacher Longlegs for his teachings. He already knew how to discipline these believers. Abio got the order and turned around to leave. A night of silence. Abio met his girlfriend Timi. The latter fainted directly in the arms of her lover due to her poor mental state and great joy and sorrow. In the second half of the night, Abio traveled through the sewers, found the active death believers, and conveyed the orders of the Death Knights. Believers may not believe it, but if they miss the meeting in 3 days, there will be consequences at their own risk. Just as the intelligence system in Windsor was penetrated into a sieve, so were the death believers gathered in London. Most of them came from the bottom and focused on a lack of organization and discipline. Before the news of the Death Knight calling for a gathering spread, several church leaders came to the rescue. Message received. The mystery will soon be solved, and the Death Knight will personally explain the purpose of arriving in London. For a moment, everyone was waiting for the early morning of 3 days later. Restarting the myth. Author, Feng Chao Huang. Chapter 75. Big Cemetery. The cold moon was hazy, darkness enveloped the sky, and fog enveloped the earth. In this dark area, the tombstones were like heavy silhouettes, standing under the pale moonlight. The cemetery was surrounded by tall trees. The sound of wind swept through, the fog whistled, and the leaves rustled, breaking the dead silence. The center of the cemetery was the place with the thickest fog. Where phosphorescent fire was swaying, a group of black-clothed people holding lanterns stood, adding a touch of horror to the dead silence. The believers of death arrived as promised, waiting for the Death Knight to convey the oracle. This was a very stupid gathering. Once surrounded by the magicians of the Three Goddesses Alliance, or if this gathering was a trap at all, the leader of the death believers of London would be caught in one fell swoop. But they still came, which was the piety of faith and the ignorance of faith. Time gradually came to the early morning. In the woods around the cemetery, pairs of eyes opened, waiting for the arrival of the death knight. There were many participants in this gathering, not just the followers of death. Several churches were paying close attention, and even the mysterious dark knight came to the cemetery at this moment. The midnight bell rang, and the thick fog was pitch dark. As the believers waited, the crisp sound of horse hooves rang from the depths of the cemetery. The evil dog parted the thick fog, and the undead servant in a beige coat and a black hat led the reins, and the death knight rode the war horse to the believers. "Goddess, we come to listen to the knight's teachings with the highest respect." The believers bowed and praised the goddess and her knights. Some even wanted to kiss the boots of the death knight, but were scared away by the roar of the evil dog. In the eyes of ordinary people, the death knight is a shabby and hideous armor, full of resentment and anger towards the living. His sword is eager to drink blood, taking away life wherever he passes, leaving death and plague, and is the embodiment of despair. In the eyes of the followers of death, everything is completely opposite. The knight is noble and mysterious, and his whole body reveals elegance. The believers held their breath and were so excited to see the knight of death at close range that they clenched their fists. They felt that their lives were worth it, and they would have no regrets even if they were immediately locked up in a mental hospital. "I am the knight of death. I come in the name of the goddess to spread the faith of death and tell the oracle of the goddess. You are all the most pious people of the goddess. I am very happy that you can come." Wayne swept over the crowd, and the skullhead made a heavy voice, "As for the others, although I didn't invite you, since you are here, I am willing to treat you as guests. Come out, there is no need to hide." After the words fell, the believers were indignant and clamored to pull the pagans out for bleeding. The knight of death came in person, and the believers hugged the thigh bone. At this moment, they were fearless and felt full of strength. Wayne snorted coldly, interrupting the believers' chattering. His sharp white eyes swept across the distance, and he raised his hand to hold down his sword. "I said, there is no need to hide, it will only bring shame to your faith." The rustling sound of footsteps sounded, and hundreds of figures walked out of the woods, clearly divided, from different forces, close to each other and distant from each other. Seeing that the bandit army was powerful and had a clear advantage in numbers, the death believers stopped talking and stepped back to stand behind the knight. Wayne. Changing sides, the believer's cowardly appearance no longer made him laugh or cry, but felt very embarrassed. The uninvited guests can be roughly divided into four forces: the Heavenly Father Church, the Free Mage Alliance, the Three Goddesses Alliance, and the friendly unit Dark Church that came to help. Among them, the Goddess Alliance can be divided into three forces: nature, sun, and moonlight. Wayne saw two familiar faces in the Goddess Alliance camp, his teachers Sci-fi and Dick, the gym's head coach. Because there were many acquaintances here, he paid attention to the representative of the Moonlight Church. A well-dressed woman, about 50 years old, with a thin face that showed old age, but in good spirits, with sharp eyebrows, giving people a very powerful feeling. There were still hidden people in the woods who had not appeared yet, and Wayne ignored them. He was here to reason today, not to fight and kill. Wayne looked around and asked all the believers of death to stand in front. What was the point of hiding behind? You have no shame, but the goddess still wants it. I brought the oracle of the goddess, and London is filthy again. Wayne ignored the movement on the sidelines and calmly narrated, "Some people live in poverty all their lives, some are born ugly, and some are born well-fed and handsome. The difference between people is so great that the world is full of injustice, but everyone will go to death and welcome death. No matter whether you resist or oppose it, you will eventually leave this world and enter eternal peace and sleep. Death is fair and peaceful. Everyone is equal in front of death. No matter who you are, you will die one day. This is the fairness given to everyone by the goddess. The believers listened to the oracle and felt that they did not believe it wrong. The goddess understood too well, and the knight also spoke to everyone's heart. The guests were confused. The Death Knight said a lot of truths. What exactly did he want to say? If this is the oracle, it is too empty. You can't attract more believers for the goddess of death even if you say this for a lifetime. Come down and we will show you what professionalism is. The goddess told me that London is too filthy. Evil is rampant here, and criminals gather here, making the already unjust world even more degenerate. It is more like hell than the human world. Wayne lowered his head and glanced at Avio. A few days ago, I woke up my servant by the Thame River. He was an upright and fearless London policeman. He was killed for exposing some injustice. After he woke up, he continued to fight against evil and successfully destroyed it. Justice was promoted, and evil was punished, which made the scale of injustice slightly balanced. The goddess, the oracle, is fairness. As believers of the goddess, you must always implement this concept. Any injustice of bullying the weak and abusing power for personal gain is blasphemous. You must not only restrain yourself, but also supervise others. The goddess requires you to establish new bases in the 5 districts of London and set up an organization open to ordinary people to help them get the fairness they deserve. Justice can be late, but it must not be absent. Wayne said slowly, and the believers opened their mouths wide. The guests were also stunned, wondering if they had heard it wrong. For example, Plank, the director of the lunatic asylum hidden in the dark church camp, suspected that the Death Knight was crazy, and he was crazy. Wayne's sister teacher was similar. Sci-fi was horrified. It was the first time she heard such a radical doctrine. Although the starting point was good, but what does this have to do with death? Instead of wasting a lot of manpower and resources, it is better to think about developing believers and fairness. There are only a few death believers in London, and it is impossible to tire them to death. Thinking of this, 11 Faye's heart skipped a beat. So that's it, she understood. At first glance, the oracle conveyed by the Death Knight is meaningless, just a bunch of empty nonsense, extremely difficult to implement, and there is no possibility of success due to resistance from all sides. But think about it, isn't this a clever way to attract believers? People yearn for light and also desire fairness. If the Death Knight can really make some achievements, the reputation of the goddess of death in London will take a 180-degree turn. Even if people don't believe it, they will not allow others to slander fair and just death. Success or not is not important, what is important is that the believers of death did it. 11 Faye was sweating profusely, and was shocked by the sinister intentions of the Death Knight. For a moment, she secretly thought it was tricky. As expected of the long-famous Death Knight, his means of playing with people's hearts are really powerful. Sci-fi didn't believe that the Death Knight was serious. His reformation in the early stage was definitely for a large-scale sacrifice in the later stage. Even if we take a step back, this is an open conspiracy, using goodwill to deceive public opinion to reach the peak of reputation, so as to expel other beliefs in London. Plank, the Death Knight is really crazy. Nonsense. A stern shout interrupted Wayne, and a middle-aged man in a white robe walked out of the camp of the Heavenly Father Church. He was the Archbishop of the London Diocese and said bluntly, "I don't know if what the knight said is really the oracle of the goddess of death. I only know that there are human laws in the world. All churches have signed agreements. We cannot use our own power to interfere with the world without authorization. This is the real fairness. As far as I know, the former Heavenly Father Church was the greatest injustice in the world. You control all the upper powers. The Papal States has stood firm to this day is the best example. If you hadn't interfered, the Papal States would have implemented a constitutional monarchy long ago." Wayne snorted coldly and mocked. The Archbishop's eyes twitched. "That's true, but the Papal States also has its own difficulties. It's hard to have a big family and a big business. Moreover, the Papal States has been very restrained. The current Pope is indeed considering the separation of church and state. The tide of the times is rolling in, and even the Holy See of the Heavenly Father must change. When it comes to an agreement, the leaders of several churches present know that the struggle is too fierce and everyone can't bear it. They will move the open struggle to the dark, and wait until the power accumulates to a certain extent, or the friction escalates to the limit, and then have another large-scale war of faith. Rightward arrow. I came to London for only three things: fairness, fairness, and fairness. Wayne mocked the Archbishop and said to the believers, "You must do your best to maintain fairness. According to the requirements of the agreement, you must not use extraordinary power. If you encounter huge resistance and cannot achieve fairness, you can go to my servant. If he can't do it, he will come to me." After that, he looked around at the believers. "Do you have any questions?" "Yes." The believers looked at each other, full of doubts. Finally, one person stood up, bowed and said, "Sir Knight, it's not that we don't believe you, but, is this really the oracle of the goddess? Why, do you think you know more about death than me? XN. That won't happen, after all, you are really dead. The wisdom of mortals cannot understand the oracle of the goddess. I won't blame you, but don't always show your ignorance in front of me. Go, obey the oracle, time will prove everything," Wayne ordered. His remarks are not just talk. He can responsibly say that although the oracle is false, death is peaceful and fair. The above insights come from his understanding of death. Quoting the warning motto of the Nelson family, "A wife of others is good, and a child of your own is fragrant." Bah, I said it wrong, not this sentence. There is no good or evil in God. Every God has two sides. The key lies in how the believers interpret it. Wayne reads tranquility and fairness in death. He is a death knight. He said this is an oracle, and this is an oracle. If you disagree, go find the goddess of death and tell her that the death knight said it himself. Let's go, work hard for the goddess, and when you die, you will definitely get some benefits." Wayne waved his hand, and the evil hound roared in the fog, opening a long road leading directly to the cemetery for the believers to leave. Although the believers had doubts, they still believed Wayne. The Death Knight was the exclusive knight of the goddess, and no one could deceive them. "I will go back and prepare. First, I will go to the Free Mage Alliance to get sponsorship, and then open 5 detective agencies and law firms to provide legal assistance to the citizens." The believers left in a daze, and they never dreamed that their beliefs would develop to this day. One of the believers walked halfway and turned back, bowed and said, "Respected knight, I received information a few days ago that the high priest of the Church of Nature is working to arrest you. The information comes from the top of the Church of Nature and is very reliable." The believer's voice was loud, and Xi-Fei's eyelids jumped. "Which idiot spread the news? Isn't it shameful to kill someone with such a low-level knife? It's not Sydney, and it can't be Simon. It can only be those 2 idiots. Goddess, this is too embarrassing. I know, leave as soon as possible, remember to avoid walking at night in the future." Wayne waved his hand, and after all the believers left, he raised his hand and pressed the hilt of the sword. "Guests, do you have anything else to say? If not, I have something to say. I, the Death Knight, have never been good at fighting, and I hate fighting and killing the most. But in order to fulfill the oracle of the goddess, I don't mind staining my hands with blood. This city is too filthy. You are noble and you don't want to go along with the crowd. Please don't disturb the believers of the goddess from upholding justice and bringing fairness to the citizens. XN. Is that fair? You are clearly trying to attract believers. Everyone didn't believe it in their hearts. Only children talk about right and wrong. Adults know that order is more important. The Death Knight's forced demand for justice will only make the muddy water of London even more muddy, and the citizens will still have to pay for it. But what does this have to do with us? The team of the Free Mage Alliance left first, and non-believers did not take the initiative to intervene in the fight. The team of the Heavenly Father Church left soon after. Death is not the enemy of the Heavenly Father, and the Death Knight is not the follower of the evil god. The members of the Dark Church waited and watched. Death is the ally of darkness. They may not directly participate in the battle, but their attitude of supporting the ally must be firm. The pressure came to the Three Goddesses Alliance. Coach Dick and the thin female magician focused their attention on the Dark Church. The Death Knight was too powerful, and the Dark Knight might also be hiding in the dark, so they could not make meaningless sacrifices. 11 Faye hesitated a little. She was the leader of the Paris Scalpel organization and had met the Death Knight more than once. Her intuition told her that there was a 90% chance that the Death Knight in front of her was a fake. He looked powerful, but in fact he was vulnerable. Considering that there was still a 10% chance, she was unwilling to take the risk. A high priest had just fallen some time ago, and she couldn't let another one fall. Wait a little longer, the strong reinforcements from the headquarters will arrive. The team of the Three Goddesses Alliance evacuated in an orderly manner. The members of the Dark Church bowed to Wayne and disappeared into the night. It can be seen that everyone was very restrained. Wayne was also very restrained. Too mature. Wayne murmured, turned his horse's head and was about to leave. Suddenly, he sensed a wave, which made Aubin and Abio hide in the thick fog and rode alone towards the opposite woods. This forest was shrouded in the dark night, the hazy moonlight could not penetrate, and the pervasive fog also stopped here. The entire forest was like an abyss of nothingness, swallowing everything in the past. At the source of darkness stood a tall figure, wearing a black armor, a cloak covering the whole body, and a black iron mask covering the face, which was tightly fitted from top to bottom, without even revealing the eyes. Dark Knight. Wayne's supernatural sense, which had not moved for a long time, issued a warning that the other party was very dangerous. Death Knight, London is not your territory, you have crossed the line, the Dark Knight said. Who are you? Wayne tried to distinguish the other party's voice, but failed. It was deep, heavy, and a little hoarse, just like having throat cancer. You may not have seen me. I am the knight chosen by the darkness, the Dark Knight chosen by the goddess. What the hell, calling yourself the Dark Knight in front of me, Wayne? Wayne was a little confused. A few days ago, he was still thinking about changing his name, but he didn't expect that this vest had already been taken. It was very bad. He wanted to negotiate with the other party, whether they could exchange their goddesses, and he would be the Dark Knight in the future, and the other party would switch to the Death Knight. Wayne knew what was going on and didn't ask, thinking it should be impossible. The Dark Knight looked at Wayne indifferently. The latter's performance did not look like an old senior who had been famous for a long time, but more like a rookie who had just started. In addition, Paris also had a Death Knight. The Death Knight in front of him was 90% likely to be fake, but the strong breath of death could not be faked. It can only be said that the two Death Knights are not the same. The goddess of death expanded the number of her knights and prepared to form a formation. The Dark Knight didn't understand, he only knew that he could obtain the status of a knight by meeting extremely demanding conditions. It was unlikely that a goddess would have two knights walking in the world. Neither knight spoke, just staring at each other quietly. Perhaps it was a tacit understanding, or perhaps it was the right atmosphere. Wayne pressed the hilt of the sword, and the Dark Knight was also ready for battle. The shadows of the trees swayed, and a ray of light shone down, separating the two knights' gazes like a sharp sword. Wayne turned his head to look at a big tree, and his heart suddenly tightened. This familiar feeling. Teacher, what are you doing here? The opponent is the Dark Knight, plus his ally the Death Knight. Hurry back to work overtime. Hey, are you so strong that you can kill two knights alone? At the same time, The Dark Knight also looked over. High Priest. With the Dark Knight's murmur, the thoughts hidden in the woods quickly left, and the two knights remained motionless. After a while. Leave it to me. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Restarting the Myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 76. Under pressure from the two knights, the thoughts of the secret investigation fled far away. In order to cover the teacher's retreat, Wayne did not move a step, pretending that he was more interested in the Dark Knight, and confronted him in a concave shape. After a while, he confirmed that the teacher was safe, and then slowly said, "Leave it to me, X2. How could I leave it to you?" Wayne was disdainful, shook the reins and jumped into the transmission channel. "I am very interested in the head of the High Priest. If you want it, it depends on your ability." The Dark Knight said nothing. After the portal disappeared, his figure disappeared into the darkness. When he appeared again, he just appeared in front of the undead warhorse. Wayne was secretly surprised. Although Yulia's portal could not cross long distances, it involved space magic, which was already very exaggerated. He never expected that the Dark Knight's transmission magic was similar. In this way, it only takes a few transmissions to catch up with Sci-fi. "Teacher, you have to run faster and don't look back." He, quite interesting. Wayne's skull grinned, trying to attract the Dark Knight's attention again. "What's so good about a long-legged queen? A real man should be a dry bone. The night is in full swing. Why don't we have a competition to see who can get the best look award tonight? The effect is average." The Dark Knight ignored it and stepped into the dark place. He freely shuttled outside the space and left Wayne far behind with a few flashes. What a trouble. Wayne rode his horse to chase. He didn't know where the upper limit of Sci-fi's strength was, and who was stronger and weaker than the Dark Knight, but according to the supernatural induction warning, the Dark Knight was undoubtedly more dangerous. Perhaps the Dark Knight's appearance brought strong hostility and triggered the supernatural induction, but in any case, Sci-fi treated him well and was his most respected teacher. His status was a little higher than that of the butler Fra, and he must not be left alone. Take a step back. In the middle of the night, the man in black followed the long-legged beauty, and the righteous Death Knight must go out to police. 2 minutes later, seeing that the Dark Knight was approaching the source of thought first, he suddenly stopped and slowly turned to look at the Death Knight who was riding on his horse. "Since you intend to take the head of the High Priest of the Church of Nature, I will give her to you, but remember, London is my territory. No one can do whatever they want in London without my permission," the Dark Knight said indifferently, and then took a step forward and disappeared completely in the depths of darkness. "The prey is in front of you, and you suddenly stop chasing. What does it mean?" Wayne didn't understand very well. He suspected that his acting skills were limited. The other party discovered the clues. He hesitated for 0.01 seconds, shook the reins and continued to approach the teacher. At this point, he had to go up, otherwise he dared not go up, and the Dark Knight dared to spread rumors everywhere, saying that the High Priest of the Church of Nature and the Death Knight had an affair. Wayne didn't care. He loved whoever he took off his vest. The teacher was not good. Rumors flying all over the sky would definitely affect his career. He also hoped that the teacher would rise step by step and become a female pope in the future, and help him, a student, to bully the villagers and sleep with the candidate for the saint. The undead warhorse leaped out of the transmission channel, landed on all fours, and trampled on the scorching white light spots. The white light spread out, like a stone breaking the calm water surface, and faint ripples spread in all directions. The scenery in front of Wayne changed drastically. The misty tree-lined path was dispersed by ripples, and the wide long street covered by the moonlight spread rapidly forward and backward. The long street is about 30 meters wide. The buildings on the left and right sides are obviously Gothic style. There are huge bell towers and majestic cathedrals. The towering towers reach the clouds, and the black spires are like swords. The exterior walls of the building are covered with complex translucent glass. Through the windows, you can see the flickering candlelight in the dark, and faintly hear the melodious hymns of the choir. The magnificent buildings are mysterious and solemn under the moonlight. The sudden ringing of the bells has covered the long street with a heavy sense of history. Is it a barrier? Wayne looked at the endless long street, and was surprised to see a figure riding an undead warhorse. His back? Something, but not much. Wayne spoke in a low voice. Perhaps the Church of Nature knew the Death Knight very well, had rich combat experience, and was proficient in 108 tricks to trap the Death Knight. Unfortunately, empiricism killed people, and he chose the wrong target. He was not a Death Knight. In terms of strength, Wayne knew that he was not as good as the Death Knight, but in terms of skills, he had more countermeasures than the Death Knight with a single attribute. Supervision. Magic power surged up, and the black smoke surged like a burning black flame. Wayne's skull head burst into two white lights, sweeping across the field like a sword, and found the suture section on the long street that connected the beginning and the end. The two Gothic buildings were one high and one low, and there were flaws in the splicing section. It looked like an AI program that couldn't draw fingers. At first glance, the overall style was perfect and there was nothing wrong with it. After a closer look, my God, the six-fingered piano demon. Wayne pulled out Shadow Nightmare, the blade reflecting the cold white moonlight, illuminating the knight's skull. He charged forward, the long sword slashing at the cross-section interface. There was a bang. The scene in front of him shattered like a mirror, and a deep space channel appeared before him. Without hesitation, Wayne rode the undead warhorse to perform space teleportation, and before the channel shrank rapidly, he jumped out of the enchantment range. This time, what appeared in front of Wayne was a green forest. Ancient trees are intertwined and countless towering trees stand between heaven and earth like ancient giants. The endless forests are magnificent and magnificent, slowly unfolding a vast picture. The second layer of the barrier has not yet been set up. Several mages stared at the Death Knight who suddenly appeared. They couldn't understand why the other party was so fast today. The leading woman has a beautiful appearance, delicate features like porcelain, long hair exuding a faint fragrance, and a light green dress that fits her body perfectly, perfectly outlining her graceful figure. Seeing the undead knight looking over, he hurriedly raised his hand to cover his face. Wayne looked at the other party in surprise. In terms of the induction of thinking, the other party and his teacher Sci-fi are almost the same. It is not an exaggeration to say that they are the same person. What's going on? Is it the teacher's twin sister? Wayne didn't understand. Seeing that the other party was elegant and about 27 or 28 years old, it was impossible for her to be the teacher's daughter, so he could only make the above guess. However, why cover the face? She is not ugly. On the other side, the woman was extremely regretful. The surging magic power of the golden wizard level penetrated her body, and the magic tide rolled up the green sky, merging into a touch of pure moonlight, and quickly completed the deployment of the second layer of the barrier. The cold moon shone down from the sky, turning into an invisible chain to entangle the undead warhorse. Wayne's arm holding the sword was as heavy as 1,000 pounds, and a strange and indescribable coldness attacked the skeletal body. The barrier can't trap him for too long. I have planted the seeds. The mission is completed. Retreat, the woman quickly ordered and led several subordinates into the secret door of the barrier. On Wayne's side, he felt as if there was something more in his body. He felt it, and the Book of Greed also felt it. Ah! Don't eat so fast next time, at least let me see what it is. Wayne complained, still wondering about the mysterious woman's thinking that was very similar to that of his teacher. It was difficult to tell the truth from the false, and even he, a student, had concealed it. Who is it? Wayne sighed that there were many hidden talents in London, and any magician who stood out was so powerful that it was outrageous. He swung his sword to cut off the invisible chains around him and rode the undead warhorse to stroll in the barrier. Although it was just an illusory barrier, the magnificent and vast natural scenery gave him a sense of tranquility that penetrated his heart. Practicing communication with nature here would definitely achieve twice the result with half the effort. Wayne was so greedy that he wanted to sit down and meditate immediately. It's a pity that he couldn't sit. The camera turned, and the undead warhorse jumped out of the portal, shaking its head and snorting continuously. "Master, I'm allergic to pollen." "Stop it, you're dead and only a pile of bones are left, how can you be allergic to pollen?" Wayne patted the horse's head. Pollen allergy was impossible. It can only be said that the venue card restrained it. Yulia liked the big cemetery in the dark, and didn't like the natural barrier in the moonlight. Who is it? Wayne muttered about the woman's identity, and suddenly, he thought of a doubt. When he confronted the Dark Knight, a thought very similar to that of the teacher suddenly interrupted. At that time, he thought that the teacher saw the dog bite the dog, and couldn't help laughing out loud in excitement. Now thinking about it, it was clearly the other party who did it deliberately exposing himself to attract the attention of the two knights of death and darkness. After that, Wayne couldn't figure it out. The other party led him into the barrier and seemed to have done nothing. Oh, not nothing. The woman buried something related to moonlight, which was suffocated by the Book of Greed and became the nourishment of the little eyeball. Wayne guessed that this was a conspiracy against the knight. The Dark Knight noticed the clues in advance and retreated decisively and no longer went deep. Only he stepped into the trap. No, there is another person who was also calculated. The teacher's face appeared in front of Wayne. The woman set up an ambush not for fighting, but after her operation, she successfully attracted two hatreds for the teacher, one was the Death Knight and the other was the Dark Knight. Unfortunately, he had thought too much, but he didn't expect the Death Knight to break the first layer of the barrier in advance and see her true face. The other party can skillfully control the two magics of nature and moonlight. Is she a member of the Free Mage Alliance, or is it that the Three Goddesses Alliance of London is dissatisfied with the teacher and came to kill with a borrowed knife? Wayne pondered for a moment. The situation became more and more chaotic. He had limited information and couldn't understand it. Very troublesome. Not only did Sci-fi have more and more troubles, but he, the student, was also getting deeper and deeper. The Death Knight's vest was involved in too many things. Every time it appeared, it would attract a lot of attention. For example, tonight, it directly attracted the close attention of several churches. The high-level leaders of the major churches in London appeared. The more the Death Knight's vest was involved, the wider the scope of influence, and the more serious the escalation trend. Wayne decided that it was necessary to put this vest aside and reduce the number of times it appeared in public in the near future. It would be best not to show up and hide the Death Knight. In the eyes of outsiders, the Death Knight of London is himself. Wayne knows very well that he can only pull out the Shadow Nightmare with the Book of Greed. He is not a Death Knight and cannot handle the grievances of the other party. If he continues to pretend like this, the situation will only get worse and worse until it collapses and cannot be resolved. The truth cannot be hidden. Fakes are fakes after all. He wears a vest to facilitate his work, not to bring trouble to himself. The sudden strong power makes me forget myself a little. It's time to fight. It's time to return to the ordinary magician apprentice. Wayne took a deep breath. The Death Knight's vest has too much influence. It is a good thing and a bad thing. Tonight is a reminder for him. It is better to be low-key as a magician. The strong power aroused his desire more and more. He was overwhelmed by the power and was a little bit arrogant recently. The previous riding on the river and the party tonight were all unwise actions of the desire for power to expand. Wayne shook his head again and again. The more he thought about it, the more scared he became. London was not the remote town of Enrord, and the power was not just the earth-centered religion that was not on the stage. He didn't even know the depth of London, but he took the initiative to jump out and focus fire. It was really too stupid. Look at the Dark Knight, how low-key he was. Except for taking the initiative to meet with his allies, he hid in the dark from beginning to end and resolutely did not expose himself to the public. I've learned it. If I pretend to be cool again in the future, I will be a hammer. Wayne gritted his teeth and took it as a warning. He vowed to learn from the Dark Knight and never step into the front stage if he could avoid showing up. Especially the vest. The vest is used to take the blame, not to pretend. The power of the vest does not represent itself. People still have to rely on themselves. Self-improvement is the kingly way. However, self-improvement and self-improvement without taking drugs are two different things. He should take drugs. If he doesn't take drugs, his fellow villagers will have to live on the streets. The next day, the fog had not yet dissipated. Wayne dragged his tired body back to the detective agency. Last night, he returned to the sewer, turned his grief and anger into strength, and under the leadership of the fire element, he swept several gathering places of fellow villagers in succession. This group of unruly people are hiding deeper and deeper. Wayne muttered and pushed open the back door. Fortunately, Ahua was brave enough to report and actively led the way, otherwise he would have been dodged by the earth, water, and wind. After several nights of intensive cultivation, especially last night, a fierce wave came. Wayne's life essence, which had not moved for a long time, rose to 96%. Although the increase was not large, the progress bar successfully advanced one step, and the effect was gratifying. Entering the detective agency, Wayne noticed something strange. The furniture was arranged exactly the same as before, and the books, paper, and pens on the desk were not moved, but he still smelled the smell of strangers. 3 smells: tobacco and alcohol. Wayne narrowed his eyes and checked around. When someone came to his house last night, the 500 magistrates he put in the drawer were not touched, which meant that the other party was not seeking money. If he was not seeking money, it could only be rape. I just want to keep a low profile. Why is someone always targeting me? Who is it this time? What enemy have I provoked again? Wayne was full of doubts and prepared to set up an ambush to find out the other party's bottom tonight. After pondering for a moment, he gave up this idea, turned to the street phone booth, and called the teacher Yuja. The detective agency is not safe. I have been targeted by someone, maybe it's the big shot before. Impossible, although he is full of benevolence and morality, and the whole article is full of lies to deceive women, but he still has basic integrity. Teacher, do you want to listen to what you are saying? This is a grammatical error and inconsistency. Also, what is your relationship with that big shot? It doesn't sound right. Teacher, do you have a safe house in London? I want to find a quiet corner to concentrate on meditation. There are a few. Sister will give you an address. Let them arrange it. You can move in this afternoon. Thank you for your trouble. Wayne was overjoyed. With a domineering teacher, moving is convenient. There is no need to be polite between you and me. Meditate well. When you become a magician who can stand on your own, Sister will need your help to support the scene. On the other side of the phone, Sci-fi once again told Wayne not to show up in the near future, and then said, "A few guests are coming. Contact me in the evening." Restarting the Myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 77. Church of Nature, Windsor Division, London Headquarters. The headquarters is located in London Central District, London, the political and cultural centre and the most economically prosperous city of London. From the outside, This is a public library that is free and open to the public. It preserves documents and provides citizens with inquiry, borrowing and other related services. The architectural style is classical and the facilities are slightly outdated. It is not a first-class library in London. However, there is a universe within. The office building where members of the church headquarters enter and exit has 3 portals, which are the 6-pointed star, the cross star, and the 3-pointed star in order. Through the cross in the middle, you can reach the cathedral, the headquarters of the Church of Nature. The cathedral is located in a vast valley. The design inspiration focuses on integrating with nature. The overall structure of the church is mainly based on nature and incorporates part of human architectural aesthetics. The towering spire is like a towering mountain, and the green lawn surrounding the church is like a stretch of mountains. The walls are carved with a large number of plant shapes, lifelike, protected by the goddess of nature, and filled with surging green vitality. The interior of the church is still designed to incorporate natural elements. Towering giant trees serve as pillars, supporting the layers of the building. Gorgeous umbrellas block the sky. Light shines through the colorful glass into the interior of the cathedral, creating a gorgeous and mysterious light and shadow effect. In other areas, elegant-looking plants can be seen everywhere. They are full of vitality and have their own uses, serving the natural disciples in the church. There is a difference between believers and disciples. Believers on the streets are not allowed to enter the cathedral. Only on special days, they can come to the lawn surrounding the cathedral to pray and worship under the guidance of disciples. Disciples are purified believers. In addition to being more firm in their beliefs, they also claim the identity of a magician and have a certain degree of contribution to the natural church. But not all disciples can enter the cathedral. The Lundam headquarters is an administrative organization and the center of the natural church in the Kingdom of Windsor. The nerves spreading from the center regulate and control the entire Windsor division. Under normal circumstances, only the administrative staff of the London headquarters can enter and leave the cathedral freely. The other disciples are not allowed to enter without permission. Some time ago, he was under pressure and asked for help from the headquarters of the Church of Nature. The 2 Knights of Death and Darkness were active in London. In order to protect the interests of the Windsor division, he requested that the higher UPS send permanent reinforcements based in London. After delaying for a few days, the church sent out a support force. The number was not large, less than 10 people in total, but each one of them was an elite among the elite. Especially the leader of the strip, Flora Evelina, the last saint of the natural church, the priest of the headquarters, and the extremely famous Golden Mage. Flora was from Frank, and she and he had a working relationship. The two cherished each other and spoke highly of each other. The headquarters hoped that the two would work together to restore the Windsor district to its full strength as soon as possible. Conference room. The light penetrated the floor-to-ceiling windows and illuminated the long conference table. Sci-fi raised her hand to her chest, bent down slightly, and welcomed her old friend with a smile. "Holy Lady, after so many years of separation, your beauty has not diminished at all. I'm really enviable." Flora was dressed in a light green dress and looked elegant. She bent down and said in return, "High Priest, I have been ordered by the headquarters to come to London to assist you. If you continue to be so polite, I don't know what to do." "That's right, you are a saint after all. I resigned as a saint last year. Now I am just a priest in my headquarters. I plant flowers, water the flowers, and do some pension work. In your position, you are the high priest, and I am now your subordinate." The two women, one heroic and heroic, the other gentle and decent, have perfectly complementary personalities. They can be called golden partners, which shows that the Nature Church headquarters has a good eye for selecting people. Sci-fi took Flora's hand and guided her to sit down intimately, with the smile on her face unchanged. "You and I have worked together in Paris and have been friends for many years. Even if you are no longer a saint, you are still my best friend. I don't treat you as a subordinate. Flora also smiled when she heard this. The two reminisced about the past and talked a lot about the deep sisterly love back then. About 20 years ago, Sci-fi and Flora met for the first time. At that time, the two were in a competitive relationship. The former was from London and the latter was from Paris, competing for the title of saintess every 20 years. In fact, there are saints' sons, and the goddess of nature does not choose. The gender is not so strict. If a woman is chosen, she will be a saint, and if a man is chosen, he will be a saint. But after all, she is the goddess of nature, with a female character, and the image promoted by the church is that of an elegant and noble hazy goddess, a holy sun or something. When the goddess descends into the will, there is no guarantee that there will be some discomfort. Therefore, the Church of Nature has not seen a holy sun for so many years. From ancient times to the present, she has always been the saint of Qing Yishui. The competition in that session was very fierce. The competition was mainly between Sci-fi and Flora. They were both favored by God. Their starting point was the finishing point of others. It was their competition, and the others were responsible for running with them to watch the fun. Among them, Sci-fi was favored by the church's senior leaders because of the dragon's blood blessing. Unsurprisingly, she was the perfect saint for this generation. As expected, an accident appeared. The accident was a pretty boy with oily hair and pink face, named Austin Landau. He licked her wildly and captured the beauty's heart. He took Sci-fi home and got married. Flora escorted the saint, Sci-fi found love, and they both have a bright future. Love makes people blind. Sci-fi voluntarily abstained from voting for the Holy Maiden election, which offended many senior officials who were optimistic about her. This also led to her being subsequently sent to the Scalpel Institution, where she has been on the front line of the battle all year round, doing dirty work. What's worse is that the love is not so perfect, it is as lifeless as a cemetery. After marriage, 11 Faye found that her husband was a non-believer. He was not interested in her natural beliefs. He also strictly restricted her food, clothing, housing, and transportation, and asked her to be an elegant lady instead of just working hard every day. Why didn't you say it before marriage? You were dumb when you were in love? Who are you smiling at here? If you had said it earlier, would I have married you? The two quarreled a lot about this. 11 Faye started domestic violence. It was not until the birth of the fruit of love that the relationship eased a lot. 11 Faye thought it was a good sign that the dead ghost finally changed his mind. Who knew that this was the beginning of her husband's worsening behavior? With a daughter, her husband increased the degree of restriction on her and even asked her to resign from the church. In the end, the two parted unhappily and began a long separation confrontation. Sci-fi's husband, Austin Landau, had a high status in London. He found the Windsor royal family to put pressure on the Windsor branch of the Church of Nature. At that time, Sci-fi gave up her status as a saint and her status in the church was equivalent to that of a nobody. The Windsor branch was happy to help Austin in exchange for political and economic support. This is called a win-win situation. The nobody was furious and went straight to Paris to start from the grassroots. Sci-fi and Flora's friendship took place during this period. From competitors to sisters, the orange situation was very good and envied others. Later, Flora was transferred back to the headquarters of the Church of Nature and served the goddess as a saint. As the spokesperson of the goddess of nature, her status was extremely high. Sci-fi couldn't do it. She could only rely on herself. Step by step, she became the leader of the surgical knife organization and became a priest of the district. After 20 years, the top management no longer hid this outstanding disciple of nature. Sci-fi won the position of the high priest of the Windsor district with her ability and returned to London. The two chatted a lot, lamenting the past and the present, and 2 hours passed unknowingly. Flora, you have come from afar and are tired from the journey. I have arranged accommodation for you. Let's not talk about official business today. You should have a good rest for a day. Thank you, High Priest. Just call me Sci-fi. I said that I don't regard you as a subordinate. Okay, Sci-fi, see you tomorrow. Bar Book 69 New. The two hugged each other, and Flora left the meeting room with a smile on her face, followed by Sci-fi, who was still smiling. The moment the office door closed, Sci-fi's face turned cold, wiped her hands with disdain, and muttered in a low voice, "Bah, it's disgusting, why is it her? This little bitch is not a good person, full of conspiracy and tricks, I don't believe she will assist me obediently." Sci-fi returned to the office and stood in front of the French window overlooking the mountains and grasslands. Flora is quite powerful. As a former saint, she has listened to the teachings of the goddess of nature a lot, and is definitely a strong helper. With her assistance, Sci-fi is optimistic about repelling the Dark Knight. As long as the Dark Knight and the Death Knight are not dispatched at the same time, the chance of winning is at least 50%. But Flora is ambitious and has a strong desire to win. If she wants to be a priest, she will be the boss. She will never be a subordinate to others and be a district priest. The district priests look equal to the priests at the headquarters, but in fact, their status is very different. Flora has come all the way to London, and she is definitely not here to retire. She wants to be the high priest. Sci-fi muttered to herself. Flora has basically climbed to the top of the church headquarters. If she wants to move up, she can only wait for seniority and time, which does not meet the other party's psychological expectations. A person who is unwilling to be mediocre will not be willing to be lonely, so she took the initiative to propose to go out to accumulate political capital. Coincidentally, she and Flora are plastic sisters. She has just succeeded the high priest not long ago, and her position is not stable. After sorting out the general cause and effect, Sci-fi closed her eyes in silence. Flora brought her trusted subordinates, all of whom were elites who had been trained for many years. Her loyal subordinates were all in Paris. Without capable people, she would only be divided by the other party little by little. Okay, I'll give you some power, and you will be fully responsible for the two knights in the future. So big. London West District, Manor Street. Wayne looked at the mansion in front of him, which was almost the same size as the villa in N Road Town, and felt that the teacher was wealthy. He was so rich that he worked overtime every night. Is this a successful person? Thinking again, the teacher was not only rich, but also a powerful magician. Wayne was so envious that his fists were hard. What, my own teacher, that's fine. Sci-fi made a phone call and transferred all the servants in the manor house, including the butler, and all of them were on paid leave in the near future. The big house was empty and unusually quiet, satisfying Wayne's requirement of being left alone. He walked around the house to familiarize himself with the environment so that he could move in and out freely in an emergency. In the basement, Wayne found a tunnel, a standard air raid shelter design, storing a large amount of daily necessities. The structure and storage were very similar to the underground tunnel of the Landau family in N Road Town. Wayne turned on the wall lamp and thought to himself that the rich cherished their lives more than one. If the material was correct, the tunnel must be connected to the city sewer. The rich man did not disappoint him. After walking for less than 2 minutes, he opened the gate and successfully entered the underground transportation network that extended in all directions. Fellow villagers, what a coincidence, you are here too. Wayne was overjoyed, opened his hands, raised his dense tentacles and embraced the fellow villagers in his arms. Who said it well, being strangers in a foreign land, meeting is fate, and knowing each other, when fellow villagers meet, they should take care of each other and understand each other. His life essence has not been filled yet, so he can only trouble the fellow villagers to take care of and understand him. The fire element was very excited and showed great loyalty. It was willing to take care of and understand, and held the other 3 elements in place, waiting for the tentacles to kill them all. The fire element represents desire. Wayne suspected that he had been forgetting himself recently, mainly because he had taken too much fire element. Although the fire element in his body was unusually calm and had never committed a crime, the principles in the books would not lie, and the fire element must bear the blame. If you hadn't been beating the gongs and drums everywhere, obscuring the high ground of IQ, how could a mature and stable person like me be so proud and forgetful? Wayne found the scapegoat and immediately criticized the fire element. The fire element cried out that it was wronged. In order to win Wayne's favor, it increased its strength to hold down the earth, water, and wind elements. 3 elements, there is a traitor among us. Wayne sucked it once and felt that the basement of a rich family was different. Even the 4 elements were stored more than other places. Put it in the sewer, he has already eaten it up and gone to harm the next fellow villager. Now he has only absorbed 90%, and there is still a constant flow of 4 elements to fill the gap. Fill the gap. Wayne was surprised to find that the air raid shelter in the big house has a strange force field that automatically gathers the 4 elements. It may not be able to keep up with the speed of his crazy plundering, but the automatic filling situation is very different from the sewer. After the 4 elements in the sewer are plundered, it takes several nights to fill it up, which is quite a bit of exhausting the pond. Unlike the big house, it can sustainably exhaust the pond. Because it is the teacher's residence, Wayne guessed that a magic circle was cast here, calling the 4 elements coming and going from the south and north to come in and take a look. Why didn't you say it earlier? If you said it earlier, I would have moved here earlier. Why bother to risk stepping on shit and wandering around in the sewer? Wayne complained that this teacher is good in everything, but he likes to tease students. Academics are important. Is this a place where you can tease casually? Forgive you once, but I won't do it next time. Wayne's meditation has reached 24 hours a day, and he has learned to meditate on his own. Even when he is sleeping, he will instinctively plunder the 4 elements around him. With such a holy place for cultivation, Wayne decisively decided to stay and not leave. He took the pillow and sheets from the guest bedroom and lay on the bench to catch up on his sleep. The invisible tentacles moved on their own and locked the 4 elements that strayed into this place into a small dark room. That night, Wayne, whose work and rest were completely reversed, received a call from Sci-fi. He was very satisfied with the new residence and promised not to leave the house and would not cause trouble to Sci-fi. This was the best news Sci-fi heard today. He praised the student a few words before hanging up the phone. Wayne had nothing to do, so he released the owl and the white pigeon to feed. The 2 birds got along well. It might be that they were different species and not competitive, or it might be that the snowy owl was too big. The white pigeon waited and didn't dare to use force. In short, there was no fight. With enough rat strips, Axu didn't regard the white pigeon as prey. I warn you, kid. If you dare to eat it, I will chop you up and make a big plate of chicken. Wayne said harshly and picked up a few literary classics in the study, ready to take them to the air raid shelter to kill time. The white pigeon relied on the power of the man and got Wayne's support. It jumped around in front of Shwe with a coo. After Wayne left, Shwe pressed the white pigeon to the ground with one claw and lowered her head to bite off a few white hairs. The white pigeon was frightened and made a coo and didn't move, just like dead. It's okay, at least in front of Wayne, they get along well. On the other side, several figures came to the big house in the night. It's here. This kid is alert and knows that we are targeting him. What does it matter if he knows? He is just a magician apprentice. Can he resist? That's right. The world of magicians is cruel. Teach him what magic is tonight. Ha ha ha. Restarting the myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 78. 4 figures came to the front of the big house, 1 parked the car to keep watch, and 3 sneaked in with guns, with clear division of labor and proficiency. The big house was empty, only the light in the study was on. The three searched for a while but failed to find the target, and gathered at the entrance of the basement. What's going on? There's no one in the house. Such a big house should have at least 2 servants. It's normal. The master went on a long trip and took the servants with him. If I'm not mistaken, this kid should have investigated and came to stay while the master was away. That's good, it saves us a lot of trouble. The intruder was fearless and didn't take Wayne seriously at all. He pushed the door and walked into the basement directly. A mere magician apprentice, not even a half-baked one, can he turn the world upside down? The three found a tunnel in the basement, a recliner, pillows, sheets, and several literary classics taken from the study. A thief is a thief. He only dares to hide in the basement when the owner is not at home. The three of them were more certain that Wayne was an uninvited guest. All kinds of evidence showed that Wayne was chased by them and had no way to escape. He hid in the basement and dared not show his head. He underestimated the magician and thought that he would not be discovered if he hid here without worries of food and clothing. The pillow is still warm. He just left not long ago. Chase. The three walked to the end of the air raid shelter and saw the open gate. After entering, they saw the city sewer system that extended in all directions. X3. Looking at each other. What should we do? Should we chase him? He may have run far away. Chase him. If we don't catch him this time, it will be even harder to catch him next time he hides in the sewer. If the teacher blames us, we will all be punished. The three of them gritted their teeth. The little mouse didn't have much ability, but he was smart. He escaped their capture again and again. But as I said, the magician apprentice didn't understand magic at all. He thought he could escape the pursuit by hiding in the sewer, but he didn't know that in the eyes of a real magician, his hiding method was clumsy and ridiculous, and there were traceable clues everywhere. One person cast a spell to spread spores, thinking to connect pollen, and perception spread to the sewers that were connected in all directions, and his vision suddenly widened. 2 minutes later. What's the matter? It's been so long since we found it, the two companions urged. No, the wind element nearby is too scarce, which limits the spread of pollen. Hearing the complaints of his companions, this person immediately refuted. 1 or 2 standing and talking without back pain, all opened their eyes to see clearly. If there were not some 4 elements nearby, it would not be an exaggeration to call this place an element forbidden zone. After a few minutes, his companions were impatient, and this person wiped the sweat from his head. Fortunately, he did his job and found the little mouse. Chase, the little mouse thought we left and stopped. On the other side, Wayne scratched his head and was puzzled. So slow. Why haven't you come yet? Fortunately, you are villains. If you were a positive character, I would have captured the magic girl hostage 3 times. At this time, Wayne had contacted the evil dog Aubin and asked him to bring the pistol he buried in the backyard of the detective agency. With the jab he carried with him, he felt that this one should be safe. The big house is the residence of the teacher. The teacher is the high priest of the Church of Nature and claims to be the highest authority and the strongest combat power in London. Wayne does not comment on whether it is true or false. She has big breasts and she has a point, so just take it as true. The evil dog has been bound to the Death Knight and is a well-known Death Knight pet. Wayne is afraid that the teacher will notice it, so he dare not let Aubin get too close to the big house. Similarly, the undead warhorse Yulia was also stopped outside the big house. Without his summons, no one is allowed to approach. After Wayne got the pistol, he asked Aubin to investigate on the ground. According to his anti-reconnaissance experience, there will not be only 3 enemies, and at least 1 or 2 people will stay behind to keep watch. Wayne told Aubin not to alarm the other party. After waiting for his teammates for a long time, he would definitely return to his nest to report the situation. At that time, Aubin could follow the trail all the way and find out the truth. If there is no one who leaked the news, just pretend that Wayne didn't say it. This group of people has poor professional quality. They are either trash or have received outsourced business. Considering various possibilities, Wayne decided to keep one alive. As for the remaining two, the scenery at the bottom of the river is good, welcome to take a bath. There is no shortage of elegant seats at the bottom of the tame river. Add 2 chairs for them to chat with Abio. In the distance, footsteps came. A wisp of fragrance came quietly. Wayne narrowed his eyes slightly, and his supervision captured the subtle airflow. He saw yellow pollen in the wind that ordinary people could not detect with their naked eyes. The pollen fell to the ground, and some fell on his clothes and face. Wayne remained calm, leaning against the wall, and slowly fell down, hiding the pistol in his sleeve, waiting for the other party to approach. Found it? The little mouse ran really far. That's him. One of them took out a portrait from his arms and compared it to Wayne's face. He was anesthetized by pollen and is now in a deep sleep. Take him away. We have wasted too much time. Damn it. This road is so long. I don't want to carry him all the time. Then drag him away. The teacher only wants him alive. He didn't say he can't be injured. The 3 put away their pistols and discussed who would do the hard work. They chased all the way here and were unwilling to return with the heavy load. 3 monks have no water to drink. At this moment, Wayne, who had been silent all the time, suddenly opened his eyes, raised his hand to reveal the black muzzle of the gun, and fired 3 shots at close range. 3 blood flowers splattered, 2 on the chest and 1 on the shoulder and arm. 1 person screamed and fell down, and the other 2 remained silent. Their wide-open eyes gradually turned gray, and they felt their chests were warm, and then a chill swept through their bodies, making them more and more sleepy. If you don't want to bear a heavy burden, don't bear a heavy burden. I am a kind-hearted person and will help you. Wayne stood up, raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Fine sparks appeared on his body, igniting the pollen spores attached to his body. A whirlpool of flame surrounded the body, growing more intense and spreading towards the surroundings. Walls of red fire rushed in all directions, burning all the pollen near the passage. The magician who was shot in the shoulder was still screaming. His 2 companions had been chatting and laughing just now. Suddenly his mood became stable and his family members didn't make any fuss. This really shocked him. The most terrifying thing is that the cute and rideable prey turned into a hunter. He still hasn't figured out why a mere magician apprentice can be so powerful. From deliberately leaving clues, to pretending to be comatose to relax their vigilance, to destroying pollen spores, erasing all unstable factors. Damn it, they should have thought long ago that this was not a magician apprentice, but an old hunter who had experienced many battles. Bang! Bang! Wayne fired 2 more shots to make sure the 2 were really asleep, and then turned the gun to the prisoner. Name, gender, who you serve, why you want to arrest me. If you miss one, I will kill you. I don't know. Bang! As soon as the words fell, the cement in the prisoner's ears exploded, and the gravel cut open the side of his face and blood flowed out. He was so frightened that he screamed again and again, "Don't shoot, don't kill me, I won't tell you anything." Wayne's eyes were so scary, and with his 2 companions fighting to the death to testify, he was a murderous demon who didn't blink an eye. The prisoner didn't dare to speak harshly and spoke quickly about his purpose. "My name is Wesker, a disciple of the goddess of nature. My teacher Joey Dobbin asked us to investigate you. He wants to arrest you. It has nothing to do with me." Wesker said with a cry, "That's all I know, please let me go. I promise I won't dare to do it again." Bang! Wayne pulled the trigger expressionlessly and shook his head. "I'm sorry, I really want to let you go, but I don't want to be someone who breaks his word and leaves out his gender." Bang! 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 Because the opponent's name was Wesker, Wayne deliberately shot 2 more times. He picked up the corpse and took out 3 pistols, threw the one in his hand on the corpse, snapped his fingers, and walked back towards the big house. He doesn't like killing, and he trembles when he kills a chicken, but if he hits the doorstep, don't blame him for being ruthless. Behind Wayne, the earth wall rose, the wind element brought oxygen, and the fire element jumped for joy. The accumulation of a large amount of fire elements made the temperature inside the earth wall extremely high, erasing the traces of the 3 people's existence as quickly as possible. Finally, the water elements rushed in, picking up the ashes and sending them to the sewage outlet next door. Earth, fire, water, and wind were all gone, and the sewer returned to its former peace. There were only 3 dark traces to prove what had happened here. Outside the big house, the security guard waited for a long time and did not see his companion return, so he started the car and left. If there was no movement for such a long time, something must have happened. He wrote down the street house number, walked around a few times on the road, and repeatedly confirmed that no one was following him, and then went to the teacher's home. Thick fog filled the air, followed closely by a pair of invisible eyes. Later in the night, Wayne summoned Aubin in the sewer, confirmed the other person's home address, and considered the possibility of coming to eliminate the roots. It might not be possible given his ability, so putting on the undead knight's vest wouldn't be a big problem, but if that were the case, someone would definitely associate him with the undead knight, and the risk would be too great to do so. After thinking for a moment, Wayne dialed teacher Yuji's phone number and translated it. The general content was as follows. Teacher, the students were attacked by your little brothers at your house. They all had guns, and they almost couldn't see you. W Omega Omega TT Kappa NO. Before dawn, Sci-fi came to the big house in a hurry and went straight to the basement to find Wayne. Are you okay? Sci-fi touched Wayne's body to confirm that he was healthy and not frightened, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. Just be fine as a student. What's going on? Who is the other person? Why is he so entangled with you? I don't know either. They chased them here from the detective agency. Their purpose was very clear. 3 people sneaked into the house with guns. According to the prisoner's account, Wayne explained the situation at that time, and finally said emotionally, his name is Wesker, he claims to be a disciple of the goddess of nature, a student of Joey Dobbin, and he is ordered to capture people alive at all costs. Teacher, you must make the decision for me. This is not a kick in my ass, it is clearly a slap in your face, they are here for you. Heep he. The truth is correct, but the words are wrong. It's a very vivid metaphor. My face has already started to hurt. Don't compare it next time. Sci-fi frowned. She remembered the name Joey Dobbin, one of Sydney's students. After Sydney's downfall, Joey was liquidated and is currently at home on the job. According to Wayne, Joey was not the mastermind behind the scenes, but Sydney was. The latter discovered Wayne's identity and wanted to kidnap students to threaten teachers. But he is confident and conceals it very well. Even her daughter Veronica doesn't know that Wayne is her student. How does Sydney know? Could it be possible that the damn bastard told Sydney? No, probably not. Although there is no lower limit for assholes, it will not break through the bottom line. Besides, what is the use of Sydney tying up her students? The most important thing Sydney should do now is to hide himself and let everyone ignore his existence. Kidnapping Wayne and blatantly using his own power is definitely not Sydney's style. Wayne, don't worry. The situation at the London headquarters is very complicated, not as simple as you think. Sci-fi comforted him for a while, and then said, take me to see where the prisoner is. I want to torture the information myself. The prisoners were frightened to death. Scared to death. Well, I was too frightened and accidentally pulled the trigger, and he died, Wayne said aggrievedly. The corner of Xifei's mouth twitched. It turned out to be this kind of fright. She smiled forcefully. It's understandable that you were frightened and your hands shook a little. It's not your fault. Where is the body? Sister, I will check the body and maybe I can learn something. The body is lost, Wayne said aggrievedly. Did the body get lost on its own, or did you lose it while walking? Xifei raised her hands to cover her face. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but she saw the shadow of her asshole husband in Wayne. Not to mention, the two people have exactly the same eye color and hair color, and there are indeed some similarities. Xifei was silent for a long time and said seriously, "Where did you lose it? Can you find it again? It doesn't matter if we can't find it. Don't let them find it. The world of magic is very complicated. They will use the corpse to make a fuss and frame you. Teacher, don't worry. I saw with my own eyes that all of them, including the pistol used in the crime, were completely thrown away. If we count the time, the dust has already reached the Tame River," Wayne said equally seriously. This. Xifei opened her mouth dryly, with mixed feelings of joy and sorrow, not knowing how to evaluate it for a moment. Teach him a lesson. The treatment is very clean and there is no fault. Praise him. What should I praise him for? Keep up the process proficiency? Xifei sighed and found that she had nothing to say, not to mention that you are my student, but just because you were attacked in my house, I will pursue this matter to the end. You have a good rest and don't stay up late reading. This I'll give you an explanation in a few days. Wayne nodded, lying on the bench and taking a nap with his eyes closed. Are you just resting here? Well, I'm scared. Yes, caution is a good thing. Xifei was speechless. She had worked overtime for several days, almost exhausted her energy, and was about to go back to the master bedroom to rest for a while. At this time, Wayne said, "Teacher, is there a magic circle that can bring together the four elements, so that the magician can more conveniently and quickly fill the essence of life during meditation?" There is such a magic circle. Because the four elements gather too fast, ordinary magicians cannot distinguish the four elements in time. The risk is very high, so few magician apprentices use it. Why do you ask? Xifei asked doubtfully. There seems to be this kind of magic circle here. Wayne was also surprised. This is your home, didn't you know? Xifei was stunned for a moment, then her face darkened. It's my husband's handiwork. It doesn't affect your meditation, right? Do you want to change your residence? No impact. Wayne shook his head repeatedly. He finally found the holy land of cultivation and refused to move it even to death. He asked curiously, "Teacher, can you tell me about your husband?" Xifei didn't want to mention this topic and turned around to leave. He's a bastard. He has nothing to say. When the recent turmoil is over, you can follow me back to the family dinner and you will know who he is. Since he is a bastard, why didn't you divorce him and why did you bring your students to the family dinner? Teacher, you don't mean what you say. Wayne drew a conclusion based on Heepee's evaluation of her husband and the ambiguous relationship between Heepee and the big shot. If the teacher didn't add green to the husband's head, the big shot would be the teacher's husband. The world is so small. Wayne muttered, "So it's you who wants to stuff me into a cement bucket and sink me into the river. Just wait, your good days are coming." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Restarting the Myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 79. Time goes back to the late night. The black car stopped in front of a villa. The man in charge of keeping watch entered the villa and met his teacher Joey Dobbin. "Why are you the only one back? Where are they? They have been infiltrating for a long time and haven't come back." "The address is, I am afraid that things have changed," so I came back to report to you first. Are you not being followed? No, I went around several blocks and was very sure that there was no one behind me, and no owl following me. That's good, you go out of town and hide for a few days. Don't contact me without my instructions. The black car left and drove directly out of the city of London. Joey waited at home for a few hours until it was light and confirmed that his 3 students would not come back, then he picked up the phone and called. Teacher, the plan failed, and we didn't catch him. Why did it fail? How did you do it? On the other side of the phone, Sydney scolded, how many times have I told you not to underestimate the enemy just because he is an apprentice? Magicians are not invincible. Guns and bullets can take our lives at any time. Teacher, you misunderstood. I did not underestimate the enemy. On the contrary, I sent 4 of the best students. Seeing Sydney angry, Joey hurriedly explained, only one of the 4 students who was out for a walk came back. The remaining 3 had no news all night. The target was just a magician apprentice. He had no ability to resist. I suspect someone was helping him. Tell me, where did your student disappear? The address is number 13, Long Street, West Manor. The people living there are not ordinary people. Why didn't you tell me before the operation? Sydney said unhappily. Teacher, I just found out. Okay, you go out of town and hide for a few days. Don't contact me without my order. I'm very sorry to disappoint you. Joey respectfully waited for Sydney to hang up the phone first, then packed his luggage, took a few changes of clothes, and prepared to go back to his hometown in the countryside to hide for a few days. The vehicle drove out of the city of London and was stopped by 2 police cars. Joey was confused when he was given a pair of silver bracelets by the police. Damn, do you know who I am? How dare you do this? Joey was furious. After all, he was also a silver mage. He really thought he could control him at will. Joey Dobbin, we know you are a disciple of the Church of Nature, and we also know you are a magician. You have the right to remain silent. Believe me, if you dare to resist, the next batch of arrestos will not be as easy to talk to as we are. Joey was silent. Obviously, the police who arrested him were not ordinary people. He didn't know what happened, and even suspected that Sydney betrayed him. In order to protect himself, the teacher threw him out as a scapegoat. Waste. On the other side, Sydney hung up the phone and sentenced his student to a professional death sentence. If he can't do even a little thing well, how can he work for him in the future? Such an incompetent student is better off not having him. The bad thing is that Joey is already one of his most reliable students, and the others are even worse and more evenly rotten. Sydney didn't know that his student had been targeted, so he called his old friend to check the address of number 13 Long Street, West Manor to see where the owner came from. The result was not very good. This big house belonged to the Landau family. Bang! Sydney slammed the table and stood up, his face gloomy and terrible. The Landau family is one of the 14 tulip families in the Kingdom of Windsor, and one of the knight swords that the royal family relies on the most. Others don't know, but he knows that the 14 tulip families have established a famous organization in Windsor, the Free Mage Alliance. The Free Mage Alliance also affects the entire magic world of Windsor. It seems low-key and any church can step on it. In fact, it is not obvious. What floats on the surface is just the tip of the iceberg. His people rushed into the Landau family to rob people, and the consequences can be imagined. Austin Landau, Your Majesty, Sydney dared to rush into my house to rob people today, and he will dare to rush into the palace to rob you tomorrow. He is so cruel that he would rather kill the wrong person than let him go. It is not only the Landau family that is terrible, but also the mistress of the Landau family. Sif Landau is the current high priest of the Windsor division. Sydney knows that he is regarded as a thorn in the eye by Sif. The other party wants to uproot his power in London, but he has given up for the time being because of his limited strength. He has been staying at home these days so as not to give the other party a handle. He never expected that he would take the initiative to hand over the handle to the other party just by catching a magician apprentice. Who is this magician apprentice? Why is he so wild? Is his name Wayne Landau? Sidney was furious. He had been patient for many days but failed. Tracing back to the source, it was all the fault of the Lord of the Void. If it weren't for the last time, he would not have fallen into such a passive situation. Sidney hurried to the study, opened the secret door and entered the black void. His mind and will impacted and slammed into the golden statue. "Wake up, old man, don't sleep." The golden statue dispersed a wisp of mind and will, and the voice of the Lord of the Void came out, "Sidney, my beloved apprentice, did you bring the person?" "Who?" "The magician apprentice named Wayne." Sidney gritted his teeth and said, "Do you know how much trouble you have caused me? He is an ordinary person, but he has someone behind him. I may be targeted because of this matter. Who can make a golden wizard lose his composure like this? My student, you underestimate yourself too much. The Lord of the Void didn't care, you are bound by false power and honor. Only by breaking free of this shackle can you see your complete self. This may be an opportunity to promote you to the road of legend. Shut up, don't talk nonsense in front of me, you are crazy, I am not." Sidney said angrily, "I can't help you, you go find someone else, don't come to me in the future." "He, my student, it seems that you are really angry. Tell me, who is behind Wayne, what kind of umbrella has he found?" "Tulip family." "Tulip?" The Lord of the Void muttered to himself, mumbling for a long time, and then said, "What a familiar name, I seem to have heard it somewhere." Sidney was almost angry to death. He knew that this old madman was unreliable. The legendary wizard who became famous in Windsor forgot the Tulip family. Why can't he forget his student? What is worth remembering? Can't you change it? Forget it? A name that cannot remain in my memory must not be worth remembering. The Lord of the Void changed the subject and said coldly, "Sidney, bring Wayne to see me, immediately, now, I don't want to wait any longer." "Marshal, is this your attitude when asking people to do things for you?" Sidney's tone was also cold. "This is an order." The statue glowed, projecting the will of the Lord of the Void. A little bit of white flesh foam was born out of thin air, with dots connecting lines and lines connecting surfaces, and the dark void became a breeding ground for white foam. The tentacles and veins wandered all over the ground, the white translucent skin secreted mucus, and the inside was intertwined with blood vessel-like flowing lines. Every piece of disgusting rotten meat was filled with extremely evil vitality. The dark void was filled with white flesh foam, surrounding Sidney from all directions, blocking the exit in a very short time, blocking Sidney's retreat. Sidney's eyes flashed with ferocity, and he did not make any movement. The golden triangle pattern spread out under his feet, and the life barrier rose from the ground, blocking the attacking white foam tentacles and protecting his own thinking from erosion. "Sidney, my best student. XN." The white foam tentacles pressed against the life barrier, twisted and squirmed, and opened a big mouth like the abyss. Every time it opened and closed, the sharp teeth on the inner wall of the mouth would flash cold light, rubbing against the life barrier and making a squeak. Dozens of voices sounded in succession, and the biting cold wind from the extreme north whizzed across the border, pulling Sidney's thinking and disrupting his reason. Sidney's eyes were dark, and his face was extremely ugly. If it was just the truth from the void, he could barely block it with the life barrier. As long as he did not step into the door of truth, the Lord of the Void would never be able to shake his thinking and faith. Sidney used to think so, but now he found that the Lord of the Void had already made a move on him, maybe before he went crazy, or maybe it was those transactions. In short, his mind is controlled by the Lord of the Void, who can drag his mind into the void universe at any time, or freeze his mind and wither. Damn it, what have you done to me? Guide you to learn the real magic of life, my student, this is what a teacher should do. The mouth of the abyss is sometimes closed and sometimes opened, and a series of continuous noises drilled into Sidney's ears, making him feel dead and shed tears of regret. If he is given another chance, he will never trade with the old madman. Look at your tears of joy, my student, hurry up and bring Wayne to me, otherwise. Sidney had an illusion in front of him, a white tentacle drilled through the life barrier, brushed across his face and raised tears. You love vanity, you desire worldly power, and you don't want to lose all this, right? At the end of the words, the dark world in front of Sidney opened a big white mouth, with white teeth comparable to mountains, exuding a suffocating stench, and swallowed him in one bite. Sidney suddenly woke up, opened his eyes, and found himself standing in the black void. There was no terrifying white flesh, no life barrier that was constantly being gnawed, nothing, even the golden statue disappeared. Is it an illusion? Looking at the empty black void, Sidney felt cold all over. He quickly returned to the study and personally wiped out the secret room built by his mind. The Lord of the Void seemed to have left, but Sidney could still hear his whispers in his ears, "Go find Wayne, and immediately, now, offer him to the teacher." Sidney shook his head to dispel the voice. He picked up the mirror on the desk and reflected a bloodless face. Deep in the pupils, it seemed that something was wriggling and was about to drill out of the eyes. Sidney threw the mirror away, cold sweat soaked his body, stood up and went to the mental hospital for psychological counseling. The moment he stood up, he froze in place. If he went there now, with the brutal treatment methods of the Dean, the Lord of the Void might be fine, but he would definitely be cured to death. Can't go to the mental hospital, can't let others know. Sidney screamed and opened the drawer, rummaging frantically until he put on a pair of sunglasses on his face, and then his emotions calmed down. He trembled and opened the cap of the red wine bottle, gulped down a big mouthful, the red wine flowed down his beard, and made a hoarse voice like a curse, "Wayne, don't blame me, I still have a long way to go, the church needs me. You are different, you are targeted by the old madman, even if I am not there, there will be other magicians to find you." It was night. Healy left the house at noon. Her physique was so strong that it was unbelievable. She didn't sleep for several days and nights. She fell asleep for 4 hours and returned to the office full of energy to work. After waking up, Healy showed Wayne a gluttonous way of eating that was not inferior to Isabella. The difference was that Healy would not gain weight no matter how much she ate. Wayne finally understood why others could sit in the office while he could only sleep in the basement. Also, it was not the teacher's husband's incompetence. When faced with such a physical monster, no matter how beautiful the vows of love were, they would not last long. Before leaving, Healy assured Wayne that she had cast a barrier around the house and no one would disturb Wayne tonight. If there was, she asked Wayne to go into the sewer immediately and run as far as he could. Seeing SPHY leaving angrily, Wayne could guess what would happen to Joey Dobbin. "Are you stupid? I have long legs to hug, but you dare to catch the student of your boss. You will have a hard time today." Wayne didn't understand why he offended Joey. It was the first time he heard this name. After thinking about it, he could only think that SPHY was exposed, and the political struggle within the church implicated him. The specific situation still needs to wait for the teacher's investigation results. Wayne was happy to be quiet, lying in the air raid shelter and watching his fellow villagers with tears in their eyes. It was about midnight, and Wayne suddenly noticed something strange. The supernatural sense frantically warned that a source of danger was approaching at a very fast speed. It was so close that it was at the door of the basement. Thinking of SPHY's warning, Wayne complained bitterly. It turned out that the magic world was also popular to beat the young and the old, and threw down the book and ran straight to the sewer. This time he didn't wait, he plunged into the sewer, and ran for 7 or 8 kilometers without looking back. The warning of supernatural sense was intermittent. Whenever he stopped, the warning sounded, and whenever he ran, the warning sound stopped. After another 10 kilometers, Wayne couldn't stand it anymore. He couldn't get rid of the pursuer even if he got lost. It was obvious that the other party knew his whereabouts very well. No more running. Start. Can't run away, only draw the sword. Not running anymore. Footsteps came from the corner of the sewer. Sidney looked at Wayne and said lightly, "I have to say that you have been able to evade pursuit many times, which is indeed a good performance. At least your intuition is very accurate. Unfortunately, you are too weak, and this is the biggest mistake you made. Who are you?" Wayne didn't waste words. Wearing sunglasses in the sewer at night, he looked like a villain. Taking advantage of the gap between talking, more than 10 meters away, raised his hand and shot. Bang! The bullet hit Sidney's chest. In front of him, it was blocked by the flashing life barrier. He raised his hand to catch the hot bullet. "It doesn't matter who I am. The key is to find your man. He calls himself the Lord of the Void and asked me to take you to meet him." Wayne's heart skipped a beat. The transport captain came to the door. "The gun in your hand is useless to me. Give up resistance and don't make it difficult for me." Wayne didn't say anything. Yes, the gun in his hand might not be able to do anything to the other party, but the sword under his crotch might not be. Wayne narrowed his eyes and was about to transform into a dead knight on the spot. At this moment, a voice full of regret came from behind him. "Sidney, you have finally come to this step. There are still masters." Wayne turned around and saw that the person who came was an unkempt old man with a white beard, sloppy appearance, and greasy. Especially the white beard, which was covered with patina. Restarting the Myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 80. Dean Plank. Sidney looked at the old man with the white beard in surprise. "Why are you here?" You are following me." "I'm not following you, I'm here for your teacher Marshall, Sidney, who's hidden in your mind." Plank shook his head slightly and stepped forward slowly. "Do you still remember, in the dean's office, you asked me for help? Marshall betrayed his faith and claimed to be the Lord of the Void. He has degenerated into an evil god. You want to kill the sinful master and disciple with your own hands. Relation. That's what happened." Sidney looked dazed, his thinking was disturbed, and his memory was severely impaired. But he didn't think so. He locked eyes with Wayne and said with a ferocious face, "Thank you for your kindness. It's no longer needed. Marshall promised me that as long as I sacrifice this kid to him, he will never pester me again." Wayne frowned and thought for a moment. Things were more complicated than he thought. The Lord of the Void is a fallen legendary mage, formerly known as Marshall, who was also Sidney's teacher. In order to get rid of the teacher's entanglement, the unlucky student asked Dean Plank for help. Plank searched for traces of the Lord of the Void and found Sidney, who was parasitized by the Lord of the Void. Thinking about the cause and effect, Wayne took a few steps back and came behind Plank. The name Plank sounded like quantum mechanics when he heard it, and he was definitely the boss. Plank glanced at Wayne curiously. "Sidney, why is your teacher obsessed with a young man? Is there anything special about him?" "It's nothing special and I don't care about that." Sidney showed pain on his face. "Dean Plank, I am one of the attending physicians of Hongyelen Lunatic Asylum. He is just a magic apprentice. For the sake of Hongyelen, he was handed over to me. I'm afraid this won't work." Plank flatly refused. After accepting Sidney's commission, he spent the rest of his time tracking the traces of the Lord of the Void, except attending the gathering in the cemetery. The Void universe is vast and full of dangers. Even the legendary mage does not dare to stay in it for a long time. The way he pursues the Lord of the Void is to wait for the other party to show up. With the help of several old friends, Planck waited for the target this morning. He did not leave immediately, firstly to give Sydney a chance, and secondly to see what the Lord of the Void was looking for. Planck was very surprised. The Lord of the Void was interested in a magician apprentice. What does a magician's apprentice have to care about? The Lord of the Void is crazy. Well, it is indeed crazy. But that's not the point. According to Gangplank's inference, the Lord of the Void has regained some of his sanity and has not dissipated like other legendary mages. Being obsessed with the magician's apprentice again and again, even thinking about returning to the god's chosen continent, only shows that the magician's apprentice is not as simple as it seems on the surface. It's a bit interesting. I heard that the Heavenly Father's church is also secretly searching for something. Thinking of this, Planck showed an amiable smile to Wayne. Introduce yourself, Planck, the director of Hong-Elen Lunatic Asylum. Young man, as long as I am here tonight, no one can hurt you. Wayne, thank you very much, Dean. I'll leave it to you tonight. Wayne took a few steps back again. The old man had a weird smile and was very friendly. He couldn't tell what was wrong, but if he had to say. Weird. The corners of her mouth and eyes were narrowed, as if she was lusting after his body. Considering that the land under his feet was the Kingdom of Windsor, Wayne decided to stay away from Gangplank just to be on the safe side. Planck, he is just a magic apprentice. I am the chief physician of the Lunatic Asylum, the Golden Mage, and I may be the high priest of the Church of Nature in the future. Sydney was very angry. He asked a question, and Planck actually answered wrong. Sydney, please stay rational. Your thoughts belong only to you. You can completely cut off the connection with Marshall, Planck advised. Don't talk nonsense in front of me. At least I'm much more sensible than you. I know how to choose. Sydney became even more angry when he heard this. A voice in his ear reminded him that once the past is cut off, his thinking and magic power will shrink significantly. Without power, he is worthless and will never be able to realize his dream. Sydney, you're going to go crazy and become like Marshall. Shut up, you old man, I should say this. Look at your crazy look, you are the madman, Sydney roared ferociously, and he could hear contempt and ridicule in Planck's tone. The roar turned into sound waves, picking up the free wind elements and releasing them like raindrops. For some reason, the rain was not heavy. The misty drizzle shot down, came to Planck, hit the ripples, and became silent for an instant. Planck did not fight back, as if he was waiting for something. His actions were interpreted by Sydney as disregard, and his anger became stronger, and his roar gradually became less human-like. Sydney's strong body swelled, and two white arms broke through the suit and emerged from behind. He lowered his head and vomited, spurting out large amounts of white flesh foam. The white foam continued to split and merge, and split again. Tentacles covered with veins and blood vessels covered the sewer wall, forming a huge wave like a flood and rushing towards Gangplank. Marshall, you are finally willing to come out. This was the moment Planck was waiting for. Black light bloomed in his eyes, and the dark thinking space slowly spread out at his feet. Sydney may have flaws of one kind or another, a desire for power, and great ambition, but none of the magicians in the world are like this. No one is perfect, and everyone has his or her own desires. Planck believed that there was still a possibility of saving Sydney, so he took a step back. The latter had served Hong-Elen Lunatic Asylum for many years, with no credit but hard work. The legendary mage's life force field unfolded, and his mind moved the void, pulling down a piece of projection to construct a unique three-dimensional space. This space replaced the original sewer, attached to the god's chosen continent, and independent of Planck's thinking. In this space, the Lord of the Void could not hide his thoughts and will. The humanoid tentacle monster lay on Sydney, covered Sydney's eyes with his hands, wrapped around and controlled Sidney's hands and feet, and lowered his head. He whispered in his ear. Sensing Gangplank's gaze, the Lord of the Void raised his head, and laughed ferociously with Disorder's features. My student, he is jealous of your talent and is afraid that one day you will become the dean. What an ugly guy. Sidney roared loudly, his mental and rationality declined rapidly, his flesh and blood gradually merged with the humanoid tentacles, and the teeth in his mouth turned into white tentacles. Suddenly, holy light fills the dark space, dispelling the decadent darkness and injecting strength and hope. Plank transformed into a humanoid light bulb, and the bright light was like an invisible hand, dragging the humanoid tentacle monster away from Sidney's torso. The Lord of the Void's facial features were elongated, and his tentacles tightly wrapped around the student. Where the limbs were touching, the fused flesh pulled out disgusting white flesh foam. Seeing that he was about to be stripped away, the Lord of the Void also released his life force field. Two unique spaces, two completely different darknesses collided, and the indescribable sounds made Wayne dizzy, saliva secreted violently, and his teeth were sore. There was a constant buzzing in his ears, which affected his vision and caused double images. Where the two pieces of darkness came into contact, he saw a large number of four elements shooting out. A lot. Very large amount. Even if it is not as large as the elemental space, it is enough to fill Wayne's life essence. These four elements seem to have been tamed. Each of them knows the way home. 1 second they are chaotic and entangled, and the next second they are clear and clear. Each one finds the right direction and returns to the owner. Wayne's mouth watered when he saw it. The fellow villagers were imprisoned in the basement and were tortured and tortured. Someone had to step forward to save them. It's a pity that we can't save him. At this juncture, war profits are being made. Even if Plank wins, he will be liquidated after the war. Using oneself to judge others, Wayne can imagine the picture. Gangplank rubbed his hands and smiled like an evil god. How can you pretend so well? Come here, Grandpa Dean will check your body. After a brief stalemate, Plank drove the Lord of the Void out of Sidney's body. The humanoid tentacle monster entrenched himself in his own space, with one of his two eyes staring at the student and the other at Wayne. Marshall, your life has merged into the void. The God's Choice continent is not a territory you can set foot on. Go back, you are no match for me here, Plank said in a solemn voice. Unless he makes any mistakes, the Dean is still very dignified. Not only the momentum, but also many props, rings, medals, holy grails, crosses, keys, necklaces. These magic props surround Gangplank, and each prop has its own aura. Wayne was immediately stunned. Who is this old man? Why is he so wild? With so much faith, can you come here to worship me? If I lose my mind one day and sing praises to the goddess of nature in front of the goddess of death, wouldn't it be like belching on the spot? Ha ha ha, my life has not blended in anywhere. On the contrary, I have found the true meaning of life. The Lord of the Void swayed his anthropomorphic body and called himself a perfect life. He said proudly, my mortal body has bound my mind. My current body is made of life magic. It is the original living body and the essence of the entire universe. Gangplank shook his head, not wanting to say anything more to the madman. He raised his left hand, condensed a javelin made of blood-colored crystals, and projected it out with all his strength, piercing the head of the Lord of the Void. Before the Lord of the Void could counterattack, the right hand hidden under the white coat threw out the sunlight rope, wrapped it around Sidney's neck, and pulled him to his feet. Darkness surged, and Wayne's eyes blurred as he returned to the familiar sewer. He looked around and couldn't find the dark area, but in the cracks of space collision, he found the four elements that were continuously shooting out. Goodoo, X2. Wayne swallowed and wished he could take the fellow villagers away from the battlefield immediately. Considering that the two legendary mages were so close, he decided to put oil on his feet. Run first, then talk, now is not the time to take advantage. After 2 steps, Wayne realized something was wrong. Why were there 2 sounds? Who else was swallowing? Sydney. The golden mage was as motionless as a dead dog in the dark area. When he returned to the sewer, he felt sleepy immediately. At this moment, he was staring at the ownerless 4 elements, wondering whether he should take the opportunity to make a fortune. In the end, fear outweighed greed, and like Wayne, he didn't dare to mess around. Seeing Sydney wake up, Wayne didn't dare to stay for long. He held the pistol and ran toward the sewer screaming. Sydney glanced at it lightly and said disdainfully, "What's the use of running? Even if you can escape from London, you can't escape their sight." As he was talking, Sydney felt cramps in his abdomen, and his stomach was churning, as if something was crawling down his esophagus and into his throat. Sydney's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly put his hand into his mouth, trying to induce vomiting to spit it out. There was severe pain in his fingertips, his mouth was wet, and 2 fingers were bitten with blood. "Sydney, my promise is still valid. Give him to me and I will never come to you again." The voice of the Lord of the Void came out of Sydney's mouth. Under the instigation of this voice, he forgot his resentment and fear towards his teacher and obeyed the order to chase Wayne. The Lord of the Void was in a hurry. In order to get Wayne, he did not hesitate to split his mind into 2, one to hold Plank and the other to hide in Sydney's body. Needless to say, the part that held Plank was most likely to be given away for free. In order to prevent Plank from being suspicious, the mind used for rear guard/cover was very heavy, and the loss was heavy. The Lord of the Void felt as painful as cutting flesh in his heart. He comforted himself that he had succeeded in strategy and avoided meaningless fighting. Now as long as he got Wayne and found the elemental space, all the sacrifices were worth it. At the urging of the Lord of the Void, Sydney's feet were like the wind, and his movements were extremely fast, but his mind and consciousness were irreversibly eroded, his eyes were white, and he was spewing white tentacles from his mouth. Unless there was a medical miracle, he could not be saved. This was inevitable. In order to complete the strategic deployment, the Lord of the Void was so cruel that he did not let himself go. Sydney, this student, was a tool from beginning to end. How could he care about the life and death of a tool? Sydney's mind was severely damaged, and he forgot the means of a magician. He only knew to chase Wayne on his legs. Wayne, because of the supernatural sense of warning, ran faster than a rabbit. Wayne's life physique was far superior to that of ordinary people, with great strength, speed, and endurance. When Sydney forgot magic, the distance between the 2 gradually widened. Finally, under the scolding of the Lord of the Void, Sydney stopped being a human. Large pieces of white foam tentacles gushed out of his body, and his weird crawling method was extremely fast. The strange species called it weird. The sound of tentacles rubbing against the wall was getting closer and closer to Wayne's ears. He turned around and fired a few shots, then continued to run forward. This time, the life barrier did not appear, and the bullets directly penetrated the jelly-like white foam. It can break the defense. It will lose blood. Wayne keenly captured the scene, waved his hand to set up earth walls and fire barriers, trying to clear the health bar of the tentacle monster in a war of attrition. The idea was good, but as the Lord of the Void gradually took over Sydney's body, the terrifying thinking gave birth to more and more white foam. After a few breaths, Wayne's enemy was no longer Sydney. The white foam flood hit the sewer and surrounded Wayne from multiple angles. Seeing that there were enemies on all sides, Wayne had to give up running away. Gangplank just interrupted the spell, and this time he wanted to show the Lord of the Void what real terror was. Death Knight, it's your turn to go online.